Hey everyone, and welcome to another Anark live stream. This is the March live stream, and today I'm actually going to be having on two guests. One is Quetza. She has actually been on the stream before. However, today she's going to be coming to talk to us about a workers' cooperative which has purchased a bookstore in Reading. The other person, Batty, is going to be here talking to us about the Prairieland Defendants. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you should stick around because that's what we're going to be talking about on the live stream. And, you know, maybe after we're done having those talks, I'll stick around and answer questions and stuff. But yeah, before we get started, I'll probably just give us a few minutes for people just to show up in the stream so we don't get started before people are here. But yeah, how's everybody doing? I'm in a pretty good mood today. Feel pretty caffeinated, pretty rested. The channel's going well. We are now over 40,000 subscribers. I am hard at work on all of the next videos for the channel. I'm working on one that's going to be an introductory kind of overview. Like, I shouldn't even say an overview. It's like a pure introduction. It's just meant to radicalize people who are really at the beginning of their stage of radicalization. No discussion of theory at all. It's really just kind of trying to get people to even realize that there is a problem. And after they've realized there is a problem, kind of move them further through the process of radicalization into consideration of building alternatives and, you know, reading theory and attending protests and all of that stuff. So that script is completely finished. And that will probably be the most introductory video that I've ever made on the channel. But I'm looking forward to filming it. I'll probably be doing that next Thursday. Working on a video about Occupy Wall Street for Means TV. Sorry, getting an alarm here. Working on a video about Occupy Wall Street for Means TV, as well as a video about Stop Cop City and a video about Chaz Chop. So those videos are all in various stages of production. Also, you might have noticed I have a new setup here. I don't think it's completely dialed in at this point, but yeah, I switched things around. I think that there's going to be a lot more like camera angles and stuff for this. Oh, I didn't even get finished getting set up. Here we go. Let's get the fancy light on. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See, so fancy. So fancy. We're so fancy around here. But yeah, so this is the live stream today, and I hope y'all enjoy. I'm going to get us started here. Oh, my camera is delayed to the audio. That's true. I've not figured out how to get that fixed live. When I do my video editing, I actually have to shift it by just a little bit from the audio in order to get everything lined up. I think it just has something to do with like a delay in the recording from OBS and something like that. And I haven't quite figured out how to fix it. I'm sure somebody who knows more than I do would be able to fix it in like 5 seconds, but that's not me. So hopefully maybe Violet can help me now that I actually got somebody who's just here to help me with like production management. So yeah, somebody says, truly, it's not a real stream until there's RGB lights. That's exactly right. Yes. So yeah, people are starting to show up. So we are going to start with the person who's going to discuss the Prairieland Defendants. So give me just a moment. All right, there we go. So welcome, Batty, an anarchist organizer from so-called Fort Worth, here today as a representative of the Dallas-Fort Worth Support Committee. How you doing, Batty?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, I just want to preface by saying this is an incredibly important thing for us to be discussing right now. I would like if you just maybe kind of lead us in with a summary of what it is that we're discussing. Give people some background about what actually took place and kind of where we stand.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, on July 4th, 2025, we had about 10 to 15 protesters show up to Prairieland Detention Center, which is in Alvarado, Texas. It's like 15 minutes south of Fort Worth, just a little tiny town. And they have one of the most notorious detention centers in the state. So on July 4th, basically, there was a daytime protest that was relatively large, and like 50, 60 people showed up, I believe. And then later that evening, some protesters decided to go back and host a noise demonstration, which, if people aren't familiar, a noise demonstration is a very common form of protest, basically just to show solidarity with usually like prisoners, detainees, etc. I mean, we had noise demonstrations outside of Tarrant County Jail during all throughout the trial once a week. It's super common. And so something ended up going wrong. We don't really know what happened on July 4th. And basically, 10 of those protesters ended up getting arrested that night. Multiple of them weren't even like actually at the protest. One girl was sitting in her car playing on her Nintendo Switch, just waiting for her friends. Some people were as far as like 500 yards away from the detention center. And these people were just shooting off fireworks, making noise, playing music, trying to like show solidarity with the people that we are like illegally detaining in this detention center. So at the time, let me look over, sorry. At the time, he wasn't expecting much because it was on July 4th. And like on all July 4th, people are shooting off fireworks. Not a big deal. Most calls that night had been about minor disturbances, and he ended up telling the jury that he thought that it might have been disgruntled family members trying to get into the facility. Evidence revealed within seconds of arriving on the scene that Lieutenant Gross raised his weapon unprovoked and took aim at the backs of two unarmed protesters who were running away, which was a crucial detail left out of his written statement and testimony until being cross-examined. These protesters didn't pose a threat as they ran. They were vulnerable, they were exposed, and the officer chose escalation over restraint. During that, in a split-second act that was likely saving the lives of these people, someone ended up firing suppressive shots towards the ground, disrupting Gross's line of fire and preventing what could have been a tragic massacre. Gross suffered a minor injury, likely caused by a ricocheted bullet. Body cam footage recorded a comment to Gross from another law enforcement officer who said, "It grazed you, bud." The government has refused to release any medical records documenting Gross's injuries. Despite only spending a couple hours at the hospital, the government continues to describe Gross's injury inaccurately, claiming it was much more severe than the evidence really shows. In hindsight, some people even believe that Gross may have lucked out. Had things been different, perhaps he would be the one on trial. So that's kind of a little overview of what happened on July 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that what we hear a lot of the time is that like the protesters actively were firing on the officers, and there's just no truth to that as far as I can see.
No, the evidence just isn't there to support it. And it's really kind of sad that the state can just lie to us about the things that are happening and misrepresent all the facts that are there, and they can get away with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that was actually like, I think the first version of the story that I heard. I heard that there was this event that took place at one of the concentration camps, and that essentially the story that I heard was just like a group of anarchists with guns just opened fire on the officers, and just every piece of information that's come out has degraded that story.
It genuinely is like a modern day Haymarket Affairs case.
It really is. And I think what a lot of people aren't recognizing is that this isn't only really targeting anarchists. This is one of the first they came for the, came for the moments, and they're coming for the anarchists, and they're going to be coming for everybody else after the anarchists.
I'm glad you bring that up, because I'm literally writing a zine about this, about like the broad silence on the left. And it's literally titled "First They Came for the Anarchists."
It's real. It's incredibly real. And here in the United States, that's an old story. Like in the early 1900s, first they came for the anarchists before they ever came for communists or state socialists of any kind. We had the Black Scare before we had the Red Scare. And in the Black Scare, or the Anarchist Exclusion Act, it opened the way, it paved the way for the suppression of all kinds of radicals and the whole McCarthy era that came later.
Especially with like the Palmer raids and such. I think it was like 1921. The FBI just consistently targets anarchists.
Absolutely.
It's one thing they're apparently very fucking good at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's partially because they know that so many people don't show solidarity to anarchists, even though anarchists are fighting for everybody's rights and everybody's freedom. A lot of people just, kind of throw us under the bus. And then it turns out that backfires and it hurts them as well. Yeah. So, yeah, it's that's part of the reason why that this case is so incredibly important. It's not only important for anarchists, because we're kind of always at the target of suppression, but it's important for anybody that is on the left, or really anybody that is not a fascist at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, tell us now about the arc of the case. Like, how does this all kind of proceeded after the event?
So after months of state and federal indictments, jail transfers, changes in the government story, the Department of Justice brought forward a federal trial against 9 defendants in the North District of Texas. The trial lasted from February 23rd to March 13th, only about 3 weeks. It resulted in guilty verdicts on all protest-related charges, featuring dozens of officers from multiple states and federal agencies, and several cooperating defendants, and a widely discredited so-called Antifa expert named Kyle Schittler is what we've been calling him. His actual last name's like Schiedler or something, but we've been calling him Kyle Schittler. While the U.S. Constitution guarantees that those accused of crimes are innocent until proven guilty, this was just not really the case here. Under the state level charges, the defendants have been imprisoned on bonds up to $15 million since their arrest. This meant that no defense expert were able to investigate the scene while the federal prosecutors began constructing their case. Discovery was withheld from defense attorneys, with some only receiving like the latest batch of discovery a week before trial. Some attorneys alleged in motions that the discovery remained incomplete. Star Attorney George Lobb, who had been hired to represent Maricela, was threatened with contempt and jail time by District Court Judge Mark Pittman if he didn't remove himself from the case. Judge Pittman, who has been admonished by the Fifth Circuit Court before, also issued multiple sanctions to federal defense attorneys for the zealous advocacy. The defendants suffered many violations of their rights while in jail. They endured daily strip searches, threats, and denial of prescribed medications and meals that met their dietary restrictions, such as vegans and like the trans defendants were denied access to their hormones. In the lead up to and throughout the trial, the jails denied defendants adequate food, showers, other elements of basic human dignity. Trans defendants, again, were denied estrogen or the ability to shave. Sudden and heavy restrictions on the provisions of court clothes hindered defendants' ability to present themselves properly and professionally. U.S. Marshals watched over the defendants in the courtroom, instructed by them to not express emotion, and told them that if they cried, they would be removed from the courtroom. By keeping these defendants tired, hungry, scared, sleep deprived, the jail and the courtroom hindered their ability to represent themselves and mount a thorough defense. It's just like truly awful. Like every single step, what these people's rights were violated, and just completely mistreated.
Yeah, seems like it's absolutely purposeful. It's a state terror, an attempt to, beat down all of the protesters, to scare people from doing the same in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And deliberate act by the state. And we've been hearing continuously that I think they've even openly admitted that they're like, quote unquote, experimenting on trans people in the concentration camps or in any place where they're keeping them in prison now under the Trump regime. They're trying purposely to see what kind of terror that they can enact on trans people who are being kept in all kinds of different correctional facilities.
Yeah, it's insane the amount of, it's just a literal torture center. That's all it is. And these people are being tortured every single day. It's still going on now, well after the trial, and it started from the very beginning, like the very first day people were in jail.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, yeah, I wonder, this isn't the end of the conversation, but in fact, I'd like to make it kind of just like the midway of our conversation. What is it that people can do to help?
Sure. So one thing that we have going on right now is we have a phone zap for Rowan. She is currently experiencing horrible conditions in Wichita Falls County Jail, I believe. I think it's Wichita Falls County. I don't know. In Wichita Falls, which is a city about an hour west of Fort Worth. We're trying to do a phone zap for her because she's basically not being given access to the tablets that she is supposed to have access to. We're being told that like contacting family members is not a right that people have in jail. It's a privilege. We still have the state trial coming up. I believe starting in June. I would need to double check on that. We also have a trial coming up in April 20th, for Dario Sanchez, who has been charged with the hindering of prosecution of terrorism. He kicked somebody from a Signal chat who was at July 4th. He wasn't even at the protest, and he is getting a charge of terrorism for kicking somebody out of a Signal chat, which is crazy.
I heard that. I also heard somebody was being tried for just transporting anarchist zines in his car.
So it wasn't even just anarchist zines. So it was Dez, who is a local tattoo artist here. He is the spouse of Maricela. Mari ended up texting him over or calling him, I believe, over the jail call phone, whatever, and was like, hey, can you like just get my shit and put it into storage? And there was things like food for her bunnies and tunnels and cardboard boxes for her bunnies. There were zines, there was personal effects. It wasn't just zines though. Like, it's not like this dude was trying to criminally hide this literature, that is protected by the First Amendment in the first place. He was just trying to move his wife's stuff, and so he got charged on or convicted on corruptly concealing a document or record and conspiracy to conceal documents, which has a sentencing of like up to 40 years for a box of literature and stuff for bunnies and personal effects.
So they weren't the charge was not for just the fact that he had anarchist scenes. It was that they thought this was him concealing evidence.
Correct.
I see. Well, that's actually a good clarification. I mean, barely anything about this case is reassuring. That's the only reassuring detail I think I've heard so far. Because, I know a lot of people that are transporting anarchist zines.
Yeah, I mean, I have 150 right next to me right now, and I'll be transporting it to a concert on Tuesday. Like, it's ridiculous.
So we're not. So then, I guess the good news is that we're not establishing precedent that owning or transporting anarchist zines is itself illegal. It's that in the context of the case, they saw that as concealing evidence.
Well, from the way we see it, it still is them trying to establish a precedent. I mean, this is a blatant First Amendment issue because it's not illegal for us to have zines, but
Right.
they are actively working towards trying to make it illegal, at least in certain instances, at the bare minimum, to have these things. So it still sets a dangerous precedent.
Agreed.
All of this does.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So I also heard that they kind of were making it a lot harder for the defendants to find attorneys. Did I hear correct about that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, one of them was basically told that they could not have their attorney on this trial. Basically, the judge had the guy, the attorney was like a really well-known attorney who has helped on like multiple cases. I believe he was on the Stop Cop City trial and got several people off. He's dealt with a bunch of different political repression trials, and basically was told that he was not allowed to be on trial because he was not considered a resident of the state of Texas, even though he had been here for like 6 months prior, I believe. So it's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get any excuse to get like shitty lawyers for these people. One of the lawyers, who was a public defender, like consistently misgendered one of the trans defendants and actively told her like she's gonna get raped in prison if she ends up going because she's trans. Just it's awful. All of it is so fucking awful.
Yeah.
So
it's
the
even
attorney
awful by the standards of how we as radicals expect to be treated in the United States, which is already bad, but it's bad by those standards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was then a pressure campaign to get a bunch of them to flip. And as I understand it, some of them have flipped. Yeah.
So there is currently, I think, 5 cooperating defendants. Let's double check that. Then I don't know. I think it's about 5 cooperating defendants. Multiple went on this, or I think all of them went on the stand and basically sold out their friends. One lady named Lynette, she was crying on the stand, and when asked like, "Hey, why are you crying? You're here trying to like do the right thing," and which obviously she wasn't, but this is what like is being asked of her. And she goes, "Because those are my friends," and she just completely threw them all under the bus. I mean, the crazy part is every single one of the cooperating defendants is a white cis person, from my understanding, and they're throwing the most marginalized people underneath the bus: people of color, trans people. They're throwing these people just under the bus completely, and it's so disappointing that this is even like possible. I mean, because if they did not give a cooperating testimony, there is a very solid chance that these people would not have been found guilty.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I think that's the most disappointing part, is that if everybody had held the line, that probably wouldn't have been nearly as severe for everybody involved. And that may have even included the people who took the pleas. Yeah.
So yeah, cooperating witness Nathan Bauman admitted that he was advised to lie by his advised to lie by his attorney. As the trial progressed, key aspects of the defense arguments were confirmed by the government's witness. There was no plan of violence. There was no unified organization or ideology that was held by all the defendants. There was no coordination around illegal activity, and the intention of the demonstration was just to make noise. But because he ended up flipping on these people, they're now facing, I mean, at the largest extent of life in prison. I mean, most of these people are looking at 40 to 50 years, but it can go up to life.
So, in my opinion, one of the most important things that we can do in the anarchist movement, especially when we're in this kind of state of, repression by the state, is prisoner support.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if if you can give us some resources to be able to directly do prisoner support for all of the people who didn't flip.
Sure. So all of the defendants who did not flip are currently being supported through the DFW support committee, which is basically
should be down in the description. Pretty sure I put that
go down
there.
to the description, click on that shit. It's prairielanddefendants.com. There's also the Give Send Go. We're trying to raise $125,000 for attorneys, because again, we still have a state trial coming up for all the defendants. And then you can also keep up to date with like different little actions that we're doing in support on the Instagram. Like I said, we have the phone zap going on for Rowan right now. You can host letter writing events. April 4th is International Solidarity Day with the Prairieland Defendants. We're asking people to do letter writing events, host road shows, host benefits, whatever you can really do to support our friends.
Fantastic. So is there anything that you want to add? Because, I kind of asked some targeted questions, but I wonder if there's anything that I left out that you wanted to speak about.
Sure. So kind of like some next steps is obviously donations for the legal fees. The 9 defendants convicted during the February trial are innocent still. We maintain that wholeheartedly. And they deserve to come home. They will continue to fight their convictions through appeals and other legal means. They also have pending charges on the state level. Supporters are encouraged to go through fundraising events to support ongoing legal costs, write letters to the defendants while they are unjustly imprisoned. The donations can go to www.givesendgo.com/support DFW protesters. Letter writing information is available on the prairielanddefendants.com website. It has their addresses and the exact ways you need to basically address those. They're very, very strict on how you address those things. If one thing is out of order, they're immediately going to send it back to you, and it will all be scanned. So obviously don't say anything about the case. Don't say really anything that could get other people in trouble. Just, hey, you can say, hey, my name is this. I'm from here. I've been thinking about you. We care a lot. I'm hoping things are going okay. Keep it small, keep it light. And
they're probably not going to allow in any like radical materials if they're sent in.
No, they are allowed to have some books. There's some very strict guidelines on what books and where you can get it from. I believe they all have to be from like Amazon. That information should also be on the website. Also, we have support for upcoming trials that is needed. Dario Sanchez has been charged with hindering prosecution of terrorism. His trial will begin on April 20th in Cleburne, Texas, which is about 30 minutes south of Fort Worth. It is expected that the trial will last 1 to 2 weeks, and supporters are encouraged to attend the trial and show up for Dario as he battles these outrageous charges. And then another thing that people can do, just spread the word, host a roadshow, talk to your friends, share articles, share the Instagram posts, just like get the word out there, because that's one thing we've really struggled is making sure that the word is out there. It feels like people are just completely silent unless you're like really in the know.
Is there a particular article or video or something that you think is kind of like the gold standard of helping people understand what's happening in this case?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ones. KERA surprisingly has been doing a lot of really good reporting on it. Crime Think has a really good article on it. I can definitely put those. I can send those to you. I don't know how you want to go about doing that.
Give me a second. I'll just find it. So Crime Think. I think Crime
Yeah.
Think might be one of the better ones. So
It's called The Road to
Prairieland.
Prairieland, the crackdown on
The Road to
anti-ICE
Prairieland.
activists.
Yeah, I got it here. I'll put it in the chat.
Cool. And then, like I said, KERA has been doing a lot of really good, favorable reporting. Definitely suggest that. There's also The Intercept had a good one. Texas Observer had a good one. The Guardian had a good one, surprisingly. So there are like articles out there that are supportive towards us and are really showing like the bullshit behind this case.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. And I hope it has some effect. But, at minimum, we need to be informed about what took place so that we can learn lessons from what they did right and wrong. And also so that if we understand these conditions, hopefully we can avoid similar repression as best as possible. And if not, we can weather the consequences as well as possible.
For sure. For sure.
Well, I appreciate having you on.
Absolutely.
This is incredibly important, and I hope everybody pays full attention to this because this is going to determine the future arc of all of our movements in the United States.
Yes, it will. I mean, anarchist, communist, liberal, I mean, all of it. It's all a crackdown on any sort of dissent.
Agreed. Well, I appreciate you coming here and talking with us, and I'll talk with you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. So I hope you all found that informative. It seemed really important to have them on so we could have that discussion today. Y'all go keep looking into that and follow those resources that Batty gave us, because like I said, this is probably one of the most important cases that's happened in any of our lifetimes. It absolutely is setting the precedent for escalating repression of all leftists. And really, I would agree with what they said, even like liberals. I think that liberals should also be afraid, especially insofar as the Trump regime is still around, of how this is going to be used, how this is going to be weaponized against anybody that is basically just not a fascist at this point. I mean, we already see that they're using anti-fascist as being language that associates people with terrorism. So the importance of this case cannot be exaggerated. It will probably end up going in history books for that same reason. So, as I told y'all at the beginning of the stream, and as the stream title suggests, I have a second guest that's going to be coming on today. Our second guest is Quetza. Quetza is actually somebody who has shown up here on the stream before, and last time our conversation was cut a little bit short. I'd love to have Quetza stick around after this conversation, but in the meantime, Quetza is going to be here talking with us about starting a workers cooperative that is a bookstore in Reading, and I'll just kind of let Quetza do the introduction here.
Yeah, so first thing, before I start on that, solidarity with the Prairieland Defendants. The case is bullshit, and if you don't even listen to my part, please support them. This is important, and those are comrades to all of us. You know, that's the before anything else. That's bottom line. It has to be done, right? Moving on. So, my name is Quetza, and myself and my comrades, over the course of a blistering 2 months, really, found out that our local bookstore, Cal's Books, was shutting down because of rain damage, flooding damage, really, during some winter storms last December. And over the course of 2 months, we organized together. We contacted the store owner. He was all for selling to us, which was crazy. And over the course of 2 months, we assembled contacts, organization, structure, and we fundraised approximately $23,000 and bought the place. So it took a lot of us, but we are a worker cooperative bookstore located in Redding, California, here in Shasta County. To my knowledge, we are the first worker cooperative in Shasta County, I think, ever. Don't quote me on it, but I think ever. Which is, I mean, it's a privilege, a little terrifying, but terrifying in the way of it's we all believed in ourselves so we could do it, but seeing it happen is crazy, and we've learned a lot, and I want to share as much as I can about that process with you.
Hell yeah. So tell us a little bit about this bookstore that you bought. As I understand, it kind of has a history.
Yes. So Cal's Books is the oldest bookstore in Redding, California. It's 52 years old. It opened in the 70s, and it was owned by two guys, Cal and Walter. And they eventually added on another member, Steve, and the current former owner, Carl. It actually originally used to be located in a previous location and actually had more books, like 250,000. A staggering amount.
Yeah, that is a lot.
And that place suffered fire damage, and so they had to move it. And where they moved it to suffered water damage, so they had to move it. And then this location suffered water damage, so we bought it, and we're gonna move it.
What the water damage is a recurring story here. I'm noticing is it just a bad luck kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a hillish valley, so anywhere worth building is probably a fire zone or a flood zone. Also, Northern California goes up in smoke every summer and spring and fall, thanks climate change and Gavin Newsom. So yeah, no, there's a sort of this reoccurring history of damage happening and then a new owner. So we're strangely enough following in the footsteps of history. The bookstore lost about 20,000 books to damage. Actually, some of our estimates put that as much as 40,000, but we're not entirely sure. With that said, we still saved 80,000 books. So our those are our current that's our current stock is about 80,000 books, with about 50,000 being in the store itself.
So like those books, help me understand, like what is the composition of those? Like what kind of books are those in general? Are those like resold books that people have brought in? Like, is this a used bookstore as well as a new bookstore? Is it mostly just new books, or what is it?
So it's primarily a used bookstore. To our knowledge, none of the books were bought directly from print or from a press. They're all a product of trade-ins or thrifting or donations. It's a lot of it is just the previous owner, Carl's 35-year legacy of finding books and getting bulk orders and putting the store together. Some of our books are from the 18th century. Like we have The Complete Housewife, 1758. 1758. That's a 300-year-old book. That's
wild.
Crazy. We have a Shakespeare book that was printed in 1806. So we have, and on top of that, we have literature that was only ever printed once, or was someone's personal manuscript that they wrote and donated before they published a book with using that manuscript. So we have some books that never saw print, some limited runs, one of a kinds, first editions. It's a really unique collection, and it's incredible what we have access to now as a worker cooperative and what we can do for the community now.
No, that's so cool. That's such a good backstory to this cooperative. So now tell me about what it. I would like. I kind of have like a 2-part question. One is I'm interested in just like, how did y'all learn that this was happening and that this was a possibility? And number 2, what was kind of the process of going from the ideation to actualization, right? Like how did you go from a concept to a reality?
Yeah. Okay. So first things first is the first thing that happened was on December 21st. My favorite bookstore flooded.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the first thing. And I learned from my partner that the bookstore flooded and closed down during major flooding. That we found out about a day after that it was one of the businesses impacted. And I called my brother to cry about it. Really, is what happened. When I first moved up here, I had about $30. I actually ended up with about $30 in my pocket when I first moved up here about 2 years ago. And my camera's being a little blurry. What's going on? What's going on here, buddy? What's going on? You good? You good? Okay, cool. And I spent those $30 on groceries and a book. Is really what it was. And so when we found out about it, I was heartbroken. So I called my brother. My brother told me, "Hey, why don't you just buy the place?" And I had to tell him with what money. I work 40 hours a week. I work 50 hours a week now, actually, at my current job, plus working at the bookstore. Though my wonderful comrades have taken up a lot of that labor as I've been doing some of our community liaison work. So then I went on a drive really with my partner just to kind of lament about it. And they brought up the same thing, like, dang, I wish we could just buy it. And I was like, well, once is a coincidence, twice is an omen. Let's see what we can do. And I called my comrade Saturn and said, hey, I don't know if you're thinking the same thing, but this guy has to have an email. Like, let's just give it a shot. And Saturn was like, I was thinking the exact same thing and was just kind of waiting for another person to say it was a good idea. I'm like, okay, let's do this. We emailed the guy, heard nothing for about 3 or 4 days. And then he emails us back and tells us that he would crawl on his this is a quote, on his hands over hands and feet on broken glass to make that deal happen. This is exact quote from the email. And we were like, oh shit, we're in.
That's great. So he was super open to it from the beginning of it being like a workers' cooperative.
Yeah, no, from the very beginning. I'm not sure how much he knows about worker cooperatives, but he knew that we were community members who cared. And when we told him the concept of the worker cooperative, he was immediately enthused by the prospect of it being like democratically owned. And he fully on board.
That's so cool. This is because, I can imagine other scenarios, right? I can imagine him like not having the same politics or wanting to sell it to another private owner, but his highest priority was just making sure the bookstore stayed open.
Yes. Yeah. His highest priority was specifically making sure, in his own words, that he didn't have to sell out to an e-vendor or what he called some big box bad guy come in to make my store a second Barnes and Nobles. And
real.
Yeah. And like, I could work with that. And he was over the moon. He's like, hey, this must be fate. Like, what is it going to take to make this happen? Let me figure out a cost. And he just ballparked us a cost. Actually, he didn't, initially we were talking about getting a cost estimate. Maybe we could actually figure out what the actual price of the place would be, get an appraisal. And he said, they don't need to do any of that. I'm just going to ballpark you a number. You can fact check it if you want. I'll be fully transparent. Let's call it a 40,000. And we went, okay. That's something we did the math. That's an incredibly good deal on a bookstore.
That is incredible. That is
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, no, one of the things I'm kind of hoping to do in this discussion is kind of use this as a guide for how other people could replicate this approach,
Mhm.
but also kind of talk about how it fits into a larger political program.
Yeah.
So part of talking about how to replicate it is also talking about what things probably are just not going to be replicated because they're so unique, right?
Yes.
So like this condition is very unique, this specific occasion.
Yes.
But I wonder what kind of takeaways do you have about how other people could replicate the approach you've taken here?
So the first thing I'd say is when to look at our situation and then sort of project that knowledge forward. Our bookstore was the most famous business in the city in terms of like a concentration of community, right? While other businesses have more notoriety, more people know about them, none of them have the same cultural landmark as Cal's. So we had to understand what it is we stood to inherit, which was 50 years of sustained community input and surviving in the midst of Barnes and Nobles on pure basis of like fame and community love for it. So that was an essential factor in fundraising. Without that X factor, getting grassroots fundraising for it would have been a war. It would a proverbial war, you know. Most worker cooperatives in the United States are conversions. Meaning
Or what? Say that again.
Conversions.
Yes, right. Yeah, the workers buy out the business.
Yes. Most of them happen by the boss's usually by the boss aging out and not wanting to sell the place, so they sell it to the workers, or as a product of a union campaign. So
I didn't know the latter part. I'd heard the former, right? I'd heard numerous examples, but the latter part is interesting.
Yes.
So forming a union in a workplace ends up being a very good way to make a workers cooperative, because the union can then, when the business is going to be sold, it can bargain to just buy the workplace itself.
Yes, it would be even, I think, worthwhile to think about one of the end states of unionism. So if we talk about like system end states, there's many end states to a union. It could dissolve. It could devolve into corporate unionism, business unionism as it's called. Another end state is it absorbing the business, is just it absorbing the firm, and unity of ends and means here becomes the democratic function of the workers themselves, right? So that is an end state. For instance, in Riverside, California, Augie's Union, a coffee shop, bought out Augie's Coffee and became Slow Bloom Coffee Cooperative. So that is a path, and in fact, one of the first worker cooperatives to use its particular conversion structure was a window maker factory in Ohio. So there is a history of the union to cooperative pipeline. It is a strong one. So
interesting. Yeah, no, that's like really good insight on that last part, because I think, sometimes in our discussions, we kind of talk about how like, it's like unions on one hand, workers cooperatives on the other. And like, we don't really think about how one might kind of like lead to the other. Right. Mm-hmm. Like that, you could start a union and just not have a workers cooperative, but one day that union might become powerful enough that it actually could maybe just buy out the business. Right.
Right. The expansion of militant means of a union can enable it to starve, if it gets strong enough, to starve out the capitalist.
Right.
And then offer the capitalist an out.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategy.
Yes. It's a potentially very effective one, might I add.
Right. Yeah, they just keep upping their wage. They just keep negotiating for higher and higher wages until the business owner's like, you know what? Fuck this. And they're like, that's great. We all have enough money now because we raised our wages. We're just going to buy the business.
or strike until death and then buy out and then buy the corpse. That's a potential strategy. It can work with enough planning and financial preparation. So
absolutely.
But yeah, no, when it comes to building a worker cooperative, you have to understand, you have to really, because you're usually buying an existing business. That's usually how it is. I can talk about constructing them from the top, from the bottom up as well. But our experience is performing a form of a conversion, except we weren't workers, we were just community members. So technically, we formed our cooperative, and then we just bought the sole proprietorship and absorbed it into the co-op. Technically, we did. So technically, we did wasn't a conversion, but a buyout. A little bit of a different process. But yeah, so the first thing we ascertained was how to get organized. And when people talk about organization, it can sometimes become this ephemeral thing, this banner that floats in the air of just organization. But when we talk about the brass tacks of it, what we're really saying is have a regular meeting once a week. That's what we did. We met almost daily for the first 3 weeks, and after that met weekly. We formed a signal chat just to coordinate. We began to assemble a list of useful contacts. We built an Instagram page and a Facebook page. Created a GoFundMe, and then we just messaged local media. We got help from Reading Now and Reading Buzz and Shasta Scouts. Eventually, we worked our way up to ABC 7 News, Action News Now, and KRCR, local news network. So as well as Record Searchlight, which is a North State wide news outlet. We were in newspapers across the North State. So you can't just build that chain of contacts. We had none of those contacts. We got one person, and then we just asked them, "Do you know journalists?" And then kept ramping up the scale of outreach. So
and it worked.
And it worked. It works really well, actually.
Honestly, if you know how to write a press release, or if you can make contacts with journalists, it is really amazing how much notoriety you can get and how fast you can get it.
Very rapidly. And also, most people, this is another thing we learned. Shasta County is one of the most conservative counties in California, right? It is the troublesome county of California. It consistently defies state law, consistently you would think is very conservative. The conservatives love worker cooperatives. It's crazy. They love them.
Here's the thing.
We have conservatives living
in Oklahoma, what I've found is that one of our biggest mistakes that we make is sort of homogenizing large groups of people, right? Yeah. So
the fascists love worker cooperatives because they like the idea of sticking it to the man, but they're the man.
It's very weird. But one thing I found that in Oklahoma is that, we think that, because Oklahoma, so many people are voting red, surely they are just all of them party line fascists. And then you talk to them individually and it's no, everybody's different. They've got all kinds of different. Don't get me wrong. I've definitely met some people who are fascists. That's real. But, there's lots of people who've been voting Republican their whole life. And then you talk with them and you basically just lay out anarchism or socialism as a concept, but you don't use the word and they love it. Super down.
We got donations of books from anywhere between conspiracy nuts, who legitimately was wearing tinfoil on his head, to a few trans people in the community who were worker cooperatives, socialism, let's do this. To a person who's just been going every day, and you find out the vast majority of people Their politics are the thing that happens in front of their face day to day, and it's not bigger than that.
Honestly, that is a huge part of it. And I think that radicals, you know, if you're a radical, you probably have like a framework, right? You have like a theoretical structure that you filter the world through. And I think one of the mistakes of radicals is that they think everybody else does too, right? The majority, I'm going to say 99% of people in society, maybe more, right? Maybe like 99.9% kind of thing, right? But they don't have a theoretical structure that they are filtering the world through. They are largely functioning from their gut. They are functioning from things that other people have said to them, things that kind of like sound true enough, you know? It's mostly from knee-jerk intuition than it is from having some like robust theoretical structure. And so we make a big mistake when we homogenize the people as having like the enemy's theoretical structure. They might, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they have lots of it internalized, right? Hierarchical realism.
To speak in Gramscian terms, I mean, their baseline framework is the dominion of the commonsensical, right? It is existing cultural hegemony. I think you're.
Sorry, no, you can go ahead. I'm just going to fix my camera real quick.
No worries. Yeah, the average person's like worldview is in the dominion of the commonsensical. They exist within the predominant cultural hegemony. And no matter what conservatives want to say, the predominant cultural hegemony is liberalism. It's not conservatism. It's not fascism. It's definitely not leftism in the United States. It's liberalism. The average person is a liberal, right? Not ideologically liberal, but in the form of cultural hegemony. They are liberal because liberal is the default, right? And so when we were organizing work cooperative, we were very intentional about, okay, we are anarchists. We are 100% a bunch of queer anarchist Gen Zers forming a cooperative that operates on consensus in order to fund fundamental transformation in our community, including fundamental transformation of our lives. But they don't need to know all that. Like, it's not about lying. It's about, like, you know, figuring out what's relevant. What they need to know is we care about their bookstore. And one of our goals is we just want to operate a bookstore. And we care about people. And we care about the bookstore. We care about the preservation of knowledge. We care about what it means to the community because it's what it means to us. And that's what matters to them. And so we have our politics, and we use our politics to inform our structural position, how we are building our structure, how we format it. But our politics to the community are broadly just communitarian, right? We think it's a travesty how underserved Shasta County is. We believe that part of protecting it is protecting cheap, affordable access to entertainment and local knowledge and history. And that's why we did this, you know, and that resonated. That's what resonated with people, was the commitment to democracy and a commitment to the community and to each other and to ourselves, and just consistent openness. Right? That worked. It worked very well, in fact. You know,
I'm very glad to hear that. Sorry, my camera just died. I got new cameras, but so when you're live streaming, you're supposed to have like a power cord that permanently plugs into the camera so you can use it like a webcam. But no, I'm running on batteries right now. Okay.
Right.
So when this thing runs out, it's out. It's out. I just got to literally go change out the battery. But yeah, no, I was listening to you the whole time there. And I actually appreciate you kind of saying just that. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of modern radicals, one thing that they really get wrong is they think that the way that you build a revolutionary constituency is that you have to convince them of all your radical ideas. Like, oh, you just have to make like a whole movement of anarchists. It's like, that'd be great. I mean, go ahead. If you can, I'd love that, just like feel free. But that's not what history suggests.
No.
History suggests that what you do is you build a movement where the people are empowered and you get them engaged in the construction of an alternative and you get them engaged in conflict with the system. And in that process, you are present in order to provide the feedback of the revolutionary, libertarian, socialist, or horizontalist perspective. And that begins to transform consciousness.
Yeah,
so you have to first meet with flawed people. You have to start with flawed people, and those flawed people are who you have to organize together, not already radicalized anarchists.
Yes. Also, I find it is easier to organize flawed people than it is to organize anarchists. People who already... The issue with the confirmation bias, the inherent to like... DeBoard head here, sorry. Inherent to the spectacleization of politics, what I call the fandomization of politics, is... people develop, especially on the online left, develop their politics oftentimes outside the purview of like the social reality in which they inhabit, outside the social fabric. And this leads to very like ossified viewpoints that can be actually very difficult to mesh into like the structural reality you actually have to inhabit. Whereas I find flawed people that you just meet day to day are so down for just the basic idea of like, man, society sucks. We should improve it somewhat. And you start there and you go, yeah, okay. So how do you want to improve it? And they go, well, I noticed there's all these green yards, but like, it's kind of a waste of water. And I've been thinking about gardening, and you're like, you want me to help you garden your front yard? Let's do it. And that will engage them. That's what people want, to be engaged in something that gives them meaning, that constructs a locus of meaning. There's a fundamental action urge, the product of the emotional pain of alienation, to decrease alienation. To quote endnotes, communism is a need of the working class. It's not a want; it's a need. And however you build the commune, whether that's in the Kropotkian sense of like going of the commune is wherever the people gather, that is how you construct a politics of people, not through liturgies and proselytization, but through the messiness of the physical world in which we are all condemned to inhabit.
Damn, you just put that so good. That's going to be a stream clip right there, Quetza. I agree with that 1,000,000,000%. That is absolutely the case, especially the part about that people need meaning. Alienation creates the feeling you have no control over the world. Your desires never get to manifest into reality. And yet the people who control you, the people who are telling you what to do, it sure seems like their desires get to manifest into reality, which leads to immiseration, as Marx would have said. Leads to misery, it leads to meaninglessness, disconnection, alienation. And the way you solve that is by giving people a concrete thing to put their hands on, right? They have to actually like build the thing themselves, and they have to feel as if they actually have like an investment in the construction of an alternative society. Yeah. Because if it's just this purely abstract thing that exists out in the realm of ideas, then it's never going to, touch down to reality. It has to be something embodied in the real world, something that people find that is tangible and that appears to them as a vehicle that can actually enact change in the world, rather than something that would be nice if it were true, but nobody's ever seen it.
And to put succinctly, give people's heart a reason to beat. Humanity calls. All you have to do is convince them to answer it. That's all you gotta do. And people will. You will never be as radical as your neighbor who has been given meaning. You will never be as radical as your neighbor who has been given meaning, period. You would be surprised what people will do.
Meaning is at the center. It's really, I think, Viktor Frankl talks about this. And I agree with him. I actually think that the core human desire is the production of meaning.
Yeah. And so when it comes to wrap all this, amazing talk to worker cooperatives.
Nice. This is why I had you on, Quetza. To wrap it to worker cooperatives, the thing that makes a worker cooperative from a community, in terms of community buy-in or legitimacy, is the fact that cooperatives are by their nature community-oriented organizations. They do not historically form except out of a desire to construct, maintain, or preserve community, which either exists or has yet to form. Those are the material conditions upon which worker cooperatives find their most fertile soil. And so when you are constructing a cooperative, at every step in the way, you must go out of your way to envelop it in the messy beauty of the community. That is what's going to give it life. It's what you become, the beating heart of the community, and watch what happens, right? When it comes to getting funding, that community-oriented approach is what will get you funding. People will donate to you. We had people donating even after we opened up, just because they were like, oh, wow, you did it? Well, I want to make sure you stay in business. Here's $400. No joke. First day, someone just gave us $400 and said, that's super cool.
Yeah. So that's how you do it.
The orientation and community. I actually think that's a really good note. That's something that I think that perhaps I had not emphasized myself beforehand, but it makes a lot of sense. A workers' cooperative is it's a democratic structure, right? So it is something that inherently involves a lot more people than a private structure. A private structure involves only the owner making all the decisions, but a workers' cooperative employs a bunch of people in the community, all being involved in the structure, and is itself, because it's a horizontal structure, something that needs the community integration in order to kind of like fulfill its spiritual purpose, I guess you would say.
Yes. In order to, if dead capital, as Marx would call it, could have a species being, its species being would be an orientation towards democracy. Would be the accomplishment of democratic ends through democratic means, right? In terms of how you build, and to get to the real brass tacks of it, the first thing you have to do is build structure. The most nascent form of structure which exists is routineness, is just building routine. Having a consistent meeting schedule, taking consistent meeting notes, taking consistent meeting attendance, creating a consistent agenda, figuring out what battles do you have to fight to win the war, right? What legal structures do you need to construct? Where do you get that information? For instance, if you're in the United States, the Sustainable Economies Law Center provides a lot of resources for how to create the shell of your cooperative structure. There are fundamentally 3 basic worker cooperative structures which you can do in the United States, for instance. You could form yourself as an LLC and have your operating agreement just contain a highly democratic structure that is contractually bound, and then maintain explicit orientation towards the principles of worker cooperatives as defined by the international cooperative community. You could form a specific cooperative corporation, which is what you need in order to put the word cooperative on your business. And that's a specific democratic structure where there's a council that can be composed of either voted in members, like a workers' republic structure, or all of the workers there can constitute the board, a workers' democracy, right? Or you can be a workers' self-directed nonprofit. Nonprofits aren't owned by anyone. They're considered like community owned, but it would be managed by the workers. The workers would constitute the board, which oversees the nonprofit. So you have to ask yourself, Why am I doing this? Am I going to be a 501c3 mutual benefit corporation, a 501c3 public benefit corporation? Am I going to be an LLC, cooperative corporation? Okay, let's figure out that first. You figure out that. Figure out what are the rules which bind my organization together? What's the operating agreement? Hammer that out before you do anything. If you're the only person doing this, by the way, find 4 other people. I can't stress enough the power of 5 people in a room.
I would agree 100% with that. In fact, like as you move towards 7, 10, 15, it's astonishing how much power that begins to create. 5 is enough to be a core for almost any major organization.
Yeah, exactly. Find 4 other people who, one, you like being around because you're going to be operating a democracy with them. You kind of want to like them. Even before ideology, you want to make sure that they are baseline agreeable to each other's collective sensibilities, because you don't want that internal friction. It's difficult to manage. 2, you want to make sure that everyone has a very, very clear idea for what they're signing up for. Do they what are their politics? Outline that. Make it explicit. You don't need to put it in your operating agreement. But are you all anarchists? Is your business going to make explicit your anarchist lean? Is your business just going to be implicitly, structurally organized in a way consistent with anarchist principles, but is going to lean communitarian, like ours, right?
So I was actually curious, like, how did you, okay, so, you've laid out all the possible structures. Which structure explicitly did you all end up choosing?
Yeah, so we chose an LLC. There's a few reasons, right? So the first one is it takes the least amount of time to set up, and we were strapped for time. We accomplished this in 2 months, not because we wanted to accomplish it in 2 months, but because that's the deadline Carl gave us. He said he would pay rent for 2 months to give us time to raise money. And it was up to us to figure out the rest. So
you did an LLC, and then, you gave kind of like 3 major structures for democratic decision making. I assume yours is like a workers' democracy.
Yes.
Right.
So
right. And then how does ownership work? Because this is also sort of an open question, right? There's like some of it's like an equal shares and equal vote. Some it's equal vote, but shares differ depending on how much labor and investment. Some it's based on seniority. So for us, and this is kind of the default when it comes to the LLC route, is because you can. Unlike in a cooperative corporation where unless you explicitly state otherwise, the default is equal member ownership. In LLC, you have to make that explicit, right? All of us, it is equal shares, right? Under our operating agreement, we operate via consensus. So that's how we operate. So 1 member, 1 vote, and we, which is. Like, if you're not doing that, you're not being a democracy. Agreed.
Which betrays one of the fundamental principles of the worker cooperative, right? So it's 1 member, 1 vote. Each owner has equal shares. We operate via consensus, although in our operating agreement, we also have a democratic fallback of 75% agreement, 3/4. If we cannot achieve consensus within 2 we have 2 attempts of consensus, and if we cannot do that, we default to majoritarian democracy with with a 3/4 scale for it.
And so then okay, that's a pretty good answer to the question. So ownership split equally. That is to say, when profits are derived, all of you will receive an equal share of those profits.
Yes. So we do have a patronage system, I will say. We have a patronage system for it. So the more labor hours that you log, the greater your share of the payout. We have a base payout, and that base payout is equal. And then we have a patronage system atop that. So
explain what you mean by a patronage system.
So the way a patronage system works is if you put in more labor, you get a larger share of the pie in terms of your monthly distribution. So if you put in the course of a month, if you put in, let's say, 100 labor hours that month, out of the 400 labor hours worked, for instance, you're going to be entitled to a quarter of the share of the profits.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how a lot of different places do it. It's interesting. Like, I've heard of workers' cooperatives where to get into the cooperative, you have to invest a certain amount of money.
Yes.
Like it's like 1,000, 2,000 sometimes. And
So
then what that does is that is what you earn on, essentially. You earn on that investment as part of your ownership.
So we do have a buy-in mechanism for workers. The way our structure works is if you want to join us, you can first show up you can first be hired as a W-2 worker, who is explicitly allowed to attend meetings, although you don't have a final say in the organization. After a period of 6 months, you have automatic right to request, like, hey, I've been here 6 months. I want to be voted on to be put up as a permanent member. Or we can just pull you on whenever. Then there is a $1,000 buy-in, but that $1,000 buy-in, it can be paid over the course of a year. So
they could also, I suppose, pay it out of a percentage of their wages or something, and then slowly kind of build it up.
Yeah, well, the way we do it is you have to, that payout is within a year of joining as a permanent as a member owner. So $1,000 over the course of a year is not a lot of money. When you're at the scale of equity, right? It's more, and we do that more so because banks like to see buy-in from owners. It's stupid and capitalistic. So we also have the right to waive that. So you don't have to. So
right. Yeah, no, that's interesting, because these sort of nitty gritty details, these are the details that don't get discussed in our spaces very often, right?
Yes.
That's part of the reason why I was hoping to have this conversation, is because it's like, these are the details that will make or break whether you can actually do a workers' cooperative. If you don't have these sorts of details in order, it just won't be feasible. You just won't be able to actually manage all of the assets and have consistent finances and be able to actually expand as a workers' cooperative. Because that's another part, is that some amount of that money has to be reinvested, right? It can't just all go into worker wages. It can't all just go into profits for the workers. It actually does need to get reinvested.
For very long if you just pay wages.
100%. You won't have a business. 100%. So that's kind of an interesting aspect of this. And I wonder, what are your internal assurances that you will have reinvestment money? Like, do you have some kind of specific percentage set up ahead of time, or?
So, well, currently, the way we're doing it is for our first year, 100% of all revenue is going into reinvestment or savings. So, when you're making a business of any kind, and of course, as anarchists, I shall say explicitly worker cooperatives. If you're not making a worker cooperative or not a self-owned artisan, you are probably exploiting a worker. Don't do that. But so for worker cooperatives, you want to have about 6 months buffer. When I say 6 months buffer, I mean take a look at your costs per month. Get 10% over that. And then that number that you get, you want to have 6 months worth of that number. So if your operating expenses are, let's say, $5,000 a month, get $5,500 a month times 6 months.
And so that's what you want your liquidity to look like.
Yeah, because 1, you have to deal with inflation. 2, you have to deal with any rising costs. Imagine the nightmare scenario of making no money for 6 months. You want to have baseline your capacity to exist is assured, right? Otherwise, you will end up doing chapter 7 bankruptcy, where you liquidate liquidation, or you'll do a mass sell off, and everyone will be sad.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm glad that I can tell that y'all have taken this very seriously.
Yes.
And that's clearly why you were able to raise the money, because because other people know that you're taking it seriously. Like, it's just, clear from the way you've approached it. But you've also
radical
received
sincerity and seriousness.
Yeah, I mean, you've received some assistance from some pretty important organizations. Which one? You listed off quite a few there. Which ones were the ones that actually really helped you kind of build out the formal structure of the cooperative?
So we have a lawyer who's working for us pro bono, who is a fellow with the Sustainable Economies Law Center. For those who do not know what the Sustainable Economies Law Center, they are a law center specifically based around constructing the legal framework and legal support structures for creating worker cooperatives. If you want to start a worker cooperative, go to their website, and it has a YouTube.
You can curse. Enjoy.
Hey, fuckload.
I upgraded the curse. You said, okay, well then I'm going right for it.
Bet. I will rise to fill the space of foolishness.
Yeah. Right.
So Sustainable Economies Law Center. Literally look it up like right now if you want to. Pull up a different tab, Sustainable Economies Law Center. They're amazing. That's where your legal resources are. We just so happen to have a lawyer who's a fellow with them. And I think is also one of the people who helped work on the worker self-directed nonprofit structure. So the guy's an expert. So we lucked out. We total confluence of interest, coincidence. It worked out. Second thing, find organizations which are ideologically invested in the idea of worker co-op. They might not give you all the money, but they're going to give you support. And that support can matter a lot. For us, that support came from the Native Roots Network, which is the local node of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, which is an indigenous land back and anarchist/radical project, which in parts of its structure actually spun out from the Symbiosis Network. Our local node, Native Roots Network, who our lawyer is also a member of, helped us form that connection. And we talked, we hit it off, we found out, so we're all anarchists here. Cool. So we have ideological thrust is aligned. Why do you want to make a worker cooperative? Well, our explicit purpose is we want to defeat the megachurch cult in Redding, California. We want to build an engine of solidarity, a solidarity economy. We want to make a federation of worker cooperatives that funds mass organization that cycles back in on itself. A virtuous cycle, to use that language. In short, we want to win, and we want to win for the right reasons. And they said, "Okay, let's do this then. If you're ready for this, if this is the path you would go down, let's make it happen. Here's my email. Here's our signal. Let's get down to brass tacks." They had an organization within their structure called CoLabs, short for Cooperative Laboratories, which is essentially a worker cooperative incubator and a proto-cooperation organization, a la Cooperation Tulsa, Cooperation Jackson, Cooperation Vermont. So they helped us with financing. Actually, outside of their network, we were the first true worker cooperative project that they had financed. So we're also their testing ground to see if their economic model can yield results. And if me being here is any indication, it can.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm looking forward to seeing where this all goes. And I'm also looking forward to you just filling that bookstore full of anarchist materials.
we do plan on having a section for leftist literature, in part because we are dedicating ourselves to supporting the local DSA. I know some people might balk and cringe at that. However, they're a great pipeline for leftist activity, and they're often not bad people, and that's good enough for me. We have some ideas about maybe letting them use our space for free, because the larger they grow, the more clientele who are leftists show up at our store, which means the more books they buy, which we profit from ultimately, and we give them a free space, which they profit from. It's mutual aid, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Community integration. It's not just about outreach and signaling community. It's about building those roots. We have a radio station, Scratched Up Radio Theater. We're considering letting them use our space for free. Actually, at the time of this recording, I've given them the thumbs up. Set up your radio theater for free at our store. Let's figure out what space you need. All we ask is you let people know where you're being recorded. Not to say anything more than that. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. Free and supporting friends. Let's do it. So building those points of community integration will help to expand your reach, increase legitimacy, and also hold you accountable to the community. Because something you have to be aware of, even if you've abolished the internal hierarchy of the boss, manager, worker dynamic, the firm itself is in a hierarchical position over the community, right? Capitalism is not the domination of capitalists. It's the domination of the capitalist firm, of which the capitalist pilots, right? They hold the throne, but they are not the lords of that throne. It is the throne itself which is in control, the logic of the throne. And even if you have dethroned the king, the council can still dominate its community. And the same goes true here. It is possible to do cooperative capitalism. Happens all the time. Mondragon is example. The cooperative capitalism. Great for the Bosque region if you're a worker, but they're still doing extraction, right? So
absolutely, yeah,
holding
and that's
yourself accountable.
Well, no, it's real. Yeah, this is one of the hardest parts to balance. Absolutely, and ideally, everybody would be in a cooperative workplace, and then you would federate all the cooperatives together, and then
abolish wages.
I mean, really, yeah. I mean, if that theoretically, if that could happen, that would be very revolutionary. I think the challenge is that once it builds up to a sufficient degree, we will have a lot of power, and that will be a threat. And then we'll come to a more violent juncture at a later date. In fact, I was learning about. I've been in close contact with Clara Mate, who's a Gramscian scholar. I've been working with her on a project here in Tulsa called FREE, or the Forum for Real Economic Emancipation, and I read the first 4 chapters of her book called The Capital Order. And in chapter 4, she's laying out how robust the movement was before Mussolini rose to power in Italy. And it's interesting because, on the left, we always act like workers' cooperatives are not that transformative or not that important, or rather large portions of the left do, right? But if you look at the history of what was taking place there during that period of time when Mussolini was rising, or rather Mussolini had not yet risen, but there was a very strong socialist movement, the workers' cooperatives were terrifying the capitalists there. They were publishing newspaper articles about how workers' cooperatives were proving the obsolescence of capitalism, and how they were demonstrating the possible capacities of an alternative economy and stuff. And this scared the shit out of the status quo. It wasn't only workers' cooperatives. I don't want to make it out that way, but the workers' cooperative movement was very significant. And I think it probably had once again, not by itself, but in conjunction with everything else, I think that it was like a big part of why that fascism had to rise in response was because they had built such a significant dual power movement. They built so much counter power, as many people would call it.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that partially because that fascism rose in Italy, we've just forgotten this history. Like this history is not told. But it was one of the most successful like workers' cooperative movements on earth before Mussolini rose to power.
Yeah. As an anarchist, right? There is an additional responsibility which must weigh on us as we pursue worker cooperation. And that is the conversation of private property. Right now, until capitalism is in the dustbin of history, and we know it only through history books and the faint recollections of having to wake up when you don't want to, we will have to deal with you cannot reconcile the nature of private property, which is why, like, for example, our strategy, our goal is to help Native Roots Network construct a community land trust that will eventually own the land under us. So we are directly accountable to a form of communal land management, and also construct, prefigure, if you will, the nascent form of a usufruct, right? So of which we can fund to help expand its internalization of land and pull it out of the market, which is a revolutionary action from the perspective of capitalist accumulation. Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you repeat that action over and over and over, that's revolutionary, right?
Yes.
And that's the kind of the thing that I think a lot of people get caught up with, that they're not quite understanding. It's like, yeah, one workers' cooperative isn't revolutionary, but repetition of the model of workers' cooperatives definitely is involved in a revolution. Right. It's part of building, prefiguring what I suppose would be like a transitional structure.
Yes, and also it allows you to perform things like attacks on two fronts, right? Let's say there is a union on strike at a bookstore, right? The union could tell the customers, go to Cal's Books, and we could say all of our profits are going to go towards the union strike fund so they can strike for longer. Now, it's not just that the capitalist is losing profits. There's a diversion of interest to their direct opponents. You've created a double loss, and double losses are the thing that cascades are born from, right? So,
agreed. Yeah, no, that's the thing, is like, I think this is what the movement is one of the big things that's missing in the modern day, right? So back in the day, the union movement, one of the things that made unions so powerful is just that they had so many advantages all at once. It wasn't just one little narrow thing. It was like a lot of things all mixed together. And the one that's coming to mind right now is that they generated money in their strike funds, which they could use for striking, but they could also use for all kinds of other things. And this money was able to be spent to do stuff, to buy places, to have third spaces and dance halls, and to host events and all of that stuff. The union generated that money. That money was then able to be used. And the modern movement, it's just like, we kind of lack that, because we essentially now are just funding everything out of pocket. Right? Like everything is just coming from donations, which isn't bad. I mean, I'm super grateful, for example, in Cooperation Tulsa, how much money comes from donations. And by the way, go over to our open collective and become a recurring donor to Cooperation Tulsa. But, the truth is that what we really need is the ability to generate our own money, so that money can be funneled back into the movement, and that we're not just reliant on the charity of our allies.
Yes, as well, there is another preoccupation which necessitates worker cooperation, and that is workers have an in-depth knowledge on how to operate the bare machinery of the means of production. But the administration of production is class gate-kept knowledge. There is work that managers and bosses do. That work compares nothing to that of the worker. The work they do is the task of administration.
Yep.
And administration, a true workers' cooperative, unifies the task of the worker into the administrator and the laborer. That is what actual independence from the boss necessitates. And so it is also about building the institutional knowledge of how to self-administrate, right? And in doing so, replicating that knowledge outward and constructing the means by which we can cast off all of our chains, be they physical or, in that case, epistemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that is a huge part of it as well. You know, what I've taken to saying is like prefiguration is revolutionary school.
Yes.
Right. It's essentially learning to administer the next society. Part of the reason why the authoritarian leftist method just doesn't work is that they take power away from the people and then somehow try to convince us that somehow one day the people are going to rule themselves without a state and are going to administer all of society, yet the state is precisely set up to alienate them from control over those tasks. And here's the thing, they're not being educated about how they could possibly take on those tasks. It's not possible that you could just hand off that knowledge tomorrow. You couldn't, the vanguard couldn't just say, and now it's on you, and hand the whole society to the people. Yeah. It's true to say that in that occasion, the people wouldn't be able to do the thing. They don't actually understand. It would take them years to catch up. And even then they would have to develop all of these new mechanisms and methods and operating procedures. Mm-hmm. No, you have to learn all of the masses have to learn that stuff in the process of undergoing revolutionary activity. It can't come after the revolution. It has to come in the revolution. The revolution is the school. And I think that's the thing that the authoritarian leftists are missing. That's the thing that the statists are missing, that really is just like the solid foundation of my anarchism.
Yes, absolutely. Within hierarchies, in terms of the epistemic hierarchy that exists, as well as the labor hierarchy, they're intertwined via this function, which is to say, the administration insulates itself from labor by alienating the laborer from their capacity to self-administrate. Right? One so necessarily prefigures the other condition. By enforcing one condition, it thus necessitates the other. Right? Creating a virtuous cycle of oppression. This is one of the fundamental technologies of oppression to overcome. Is that dual bifurcation of roles, and worker cooperation is the laboratory through which we become scientists in the subject of the rest of our lives. And there is no better thing to become an expert in than your future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really the task of all revolutionaries, the task of all horizontal revolutionaries, I guess I should say, is trying to create those bodies by which the people can learn to do that administration. And that's not always an easy task, right? A lot of the time it's like, they're already having to work a job. They're already having to worry about politics, right? And so it's hard to be like, okay, cool. Now here's a second kind of like horizontal copy of the world you're already living in that we also want you to participate in. So that means you have to actually make it able to support their life, right? It has to actually be so important, so crucial to their life that this is like a necessity now that they are engaged in it, because this counterpower is actually important to the ongoings of the world around them.
Yes, like I'll give myself, for example. I work 50 hours a week at my current job, or 50 hours a week. On top of that, I provide about between 10 and 30 hours of labor, and over these past 3 months now. I started off providing about 30 hours of labor a week to this cooperative mission, working a total of about 80 hours a week. I would work sometimes 22 hours straight and then not have time to go to sleep. So instead I smoked some weed about it, and then I I went to work for another 10 hours and then went back to move more books. And then until I could not fathom the idea of moving my body another inch, and then fell asleep.
Yeah.
But as leftists, we we have to be willing to fire on all cylinders and dig for energy we didn't even know we had. In order to, how do I put this? To sleep is a luxury of peace. It's a cruel thing to be a luxury in this society. It should not be. But the cruelty of our society has constructed itself in such a manner that to even sleep is a luxury of peace. And until you can construct the means to peace, you cannot construct the means to rest. And so sometimes it behooves us in the pursuits of our dreams to forgo sleep, to forgo comfort in the pursuit of something that will build us. Right? You must build the thing that builds you back, and it's very, very exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
But
yeah, no, I mean, that's pretty much my life, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm constantly doing something. I'm constantly moving mm-hmm. toward the goal.
And now we've far surpassed our current operating budget. Our expenses will shrink as well as certain expenses go away, like the other half of our seller financing option, which is another thing. The most common form of buyout of a workplace via work cooperative is through a seller financing option. What is that? It's when the business puts up a quote unquote loan, right? And you pay them back. So let's say you're buying a business for $50,000 or $100,000. And they say, well, if you give me $30,000, the other $20,000 or $70,000 will be a seller financing option. Basically means you now have a loan, $70,000, for instance, to the previous owner that you pay back over time. This is what we did. We have a loan of $20,000 to pay back the previous owner. We raised $23,000. That was short of the amount we needed to, so we did seller financing option. We pay about $1,000 a month to him for a period of about 21 months. Plus, could be a 5% interest on it as well. So once that's over, our expenses drop by $1,000. We have a contract with the previous owner to provide his labor, services, and expertise for about 3 months. Once that's gone, we regain about $600 to $700 a month. That will drop our expenses, which will increase our profit margins. Right? All of that money is going into reinvestment or savings, but eventually that money will start going into community organizations, into our own pockets, so we can slowly transition each other out of wage labor. Some of our current thoughts are prioritizing those who currently don't have outside jobs and are just working at the co-op. Okay, we want them to be paid first because they need it more, right? I'm personally okay with continuing to work at my job for as long as it takes, if I need to be offboarded last, if need be, because the necessity of our means will dictate our actions, and so that requires a degree of discipline. But discipline's easy to build when you have a goal, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize that, and the payoff is enormous, right? Like right now we have about $10,000, but we're projecting that on a good year we could make $160,000 a year or more. It turns out the guy was heavily underutilizing his operations because he was one guy. We could make as much as $200,000 or more. We eventually plan on opening up a cooperative coffee shop with in a new location, and as well as having community rooms.
I think that there's a huge amount of potential for that store to grow. And I think that one of those things is just telling like a bunch of leftists that it's like, hey, want to sell some of your old theory? Have some really cool stuff? Why don't you just come by and maybe buy some stuff while you're here as well? You know, like I think that you could build up a huge part of your library just by buying used theory texts.
We plan on using that money to fund, for instance, Native Roots Network in their pursuit of a community land trust, as well as creating a cooperative development fund, which, and if another thing is part of research of making your own cooperative, see if there's one in the area. For instance, if you're in the Humboldt County of Northern California, there's something called the North Coast Cooperative Development Fund. North Coast is a grocery store worker cooperative. They employ a pretty substantial amount of people, and they have a fund to help other co-worker cooperatives develop, but it's only in their region, right? So we plan on doing that as well as having solidarity economy workshops. Actually, I'm working on building these solidarity economy workshops to teach people things like systems theory, financing and accounting. What is solidarity economy? How does mutual aid, worker cooperatives, unions, mass organizations, specific organizations, how do they go from just being disparate functions in a soup into an engine which can lever upon society and extract power and put it back into the community?
That is the question of the moment. That is the question. The truth is that what I've realized is that prefiguration is the answer to the riddle of revolution. You know, like that's really what it all boils down to. And it comes down to building systems that are capable of undergoing that transition. You know, the capitalists, they essentially discovered the profit algorithm and private ownership, right? Like that's really what it boiled down to. That profit algorithm and the structure of private ownership and the structure of like the private business, that was the prefigurative atom that, when multiplied, created capitalism and the capitalist order across the planet. And we have to do the same thing, but in a much more complex world. Their world was way simpler to interact with. That simple profit algorithm was enough. Whereas for us, we have to develop like very robust and flexible systems that are also horizontal.
Yeah, I mean, and it took them about 600 years to do it, if you count from the beginning of the guild communes, the Mercantile communes in the Borges region, from which we have the word bourgeoisie.
So like in the 1500s, basically.
1500s, or even Venice, one of the first republics of the capitalist class, which still held many forms of feudalism within it, of course, but it still took them like 600 years, in some cases like 700 years, in order to do that in significantly simpler conditions. Right. So it is said that the history of the left is a history of failures. And to a degree that is true. But it's important to note that capitalism has failed longer than it has ever succeeded. Right? They failed for far longer than they've currently been in power. And if they can do that with a system that's designed to self-collapse every 10 years approximately, we can do that with a social ecological system designed to perpetuate itself ad infinitum.
Agreed. And it's really just about designing it in such a way that it demonstrates itself, right? You know, one thing that occurs to me is that the models we've developed are actually good models. Like, for example, workers' cooperatives, like if you just look at the stats, they have basically the same death rate, which is to say they fail at just about the same rate as corporations. Like, you know, it's within the realm of statistical error that they might actually survive a little bit more, but they are more productive than corporations.
Yes.
And so then it's like, okay, so all things considered, they're basically just as good as any corporation, but they are more productive. And then it's like, So then I've had numerous people be like, well, then why isn't the whole world just workers cooperatives? And it's like, because their birth rate is incredibly low. The birth rate for workers cooperatives is very, very low. And so I think that's a big part of what it is. There just has to be a much higher birth rate for workers cooperatives.
And to do that, you need things like startup capital and knowledge, right? And an ability to and an eye for targeting an industry, right? Like for instance, the easiest industries to get into are retail industries. They require the least upfront capital. The hardest industries to get into are manufacturing. They require the most upfront capital. Well,
that's how the capitalists got their foothold, was through manufacturing, mostly through the steam looms and through, steam forges and stuff like that.
Though arguably the hardest one is logistics, actually.
Yeah.
Because to have a functional logistics network, it needs to be at least be able to scale to global capital in the modern society, which is a tough sell.
Very hard. Very hard.
So when you're building a cooperative movement, you're working backwards from the consumerist point of view in order to build the capital necessary to construct increasingly core systems, right? You're starting from the periphery and building into the core, which is a strange way to do it, but it's the only way we got, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the only way that the consumer isn't going to be like subjugated by the business, that the business is going to serve their needs primarily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so here's some other tips as well. If you're making a worker cooperative, let's say you've got your 5 people. Let's say you've figured out what your structure is, whether it's a worker self-directed nonprofit, cooperative corporation, or an LLC with democratic operating principles. Let's say you've already established an industry target. Maybe you even have a conversion in the works with an existing capitalist. Maybe you're trying to start it from scratch, which you can do. You can, for instance, get a cottage license for selling and then designate your kitchen as the productive space and get a tax write-off for the rental cost of the kitchen, right? You can do that because now that's a business cost for the square footage cost of your kitchen. By the way, super useful strategy. Especially if you're in California, cottage licenses are being offered more easily. Not a bad way to go if you're trying to sell just stuff out of your house. It can start there. A good thing to look at, credit unions, for one. Universally, they probably will not know what a worker cooperative is because most people don't know what a worker cooperative is. But they're likely to offer you better rates. And if they have a small business program, the more likely to help you, even though you don't have the history. One of the big barriers to worker cooperatives, starting from scratch, is the fact that 99% of places will not give you a small business loan if you don't have 2 years of prior history and a history of profitability. How are you supposed to do that?
Yeah, catch-22. It's like you need
the solution's a trust fund.
Yeah, exactly. That is the solution. Precisely. Yeah, exactly.
And it's structurally designed that way, right? The solution is trust fund because trust funds are reliable. What's not reliable from the capitalist perspective, because they cannot measure. The capitalist does not see the value in a community unless it is being exploited, right? Which means the community is not an asset until it has been hollowed, which means your community integration means nothing to the capitalist.
Yeah, all hierarchy is about consumption. It has a fundamentally entropic drive. It wants to break things down and consume them.
And so why would they give you money if from their perspective, where's your basis, right? They don't have that on the floor knowledge. You can't rely on it. Credit unions are more likely to help you. And some credit unions have even been created by worker cooperatives in order to help other worker cooperatives, right? That's a thing, like in Connecticut. I forget which one, but there's one in Connecticut. That works that way. So that's the next thing. You want to bank at a credit union. You're going to get better rates. The fact that they're a nonprofit with a fiduciary duty to their members is going to reflect in the resources they provide you. That's how they function. Also, generally speaking, joining a credit union is better than having your money in a big bank, because it's less likely to go to bombing anywhere. So the next thing is looking at things called a CDFI. What that is a community development financial institution. Most towns of a moderate size are likely to have one. What these institutions, their goal is to build the business community. They don't give a fuck about the workers, but they're interested in building the business community. They're interested in having new businesses open up, creating a shopping district, slowly constructing what they would consider to be the local culture, which for them is really just a capitalist culture, right? So you can use CDFIs in order to get funds, legal help. This is another avenue of doing so. Another asset to you might be, there's a worker cooperative in the United States called Shared Capital Cooperative. They are a cooperative. They're a worker cooperative owned worker cooperative. In other words, all of its members are worker cooperatives, and it itself operates as a cooperative.
The federated model.
The cooperative of cooperatives, shall we say, and it's a funding mechanism, and they will help you even if you're pre-revenue. You can join them and see if they will help fund your help at least provide some funds to help you get off the ground. That's another option. There are options out there. You can do this. Right. The first thing you need to realize is literally never give up. You need to believe in yourself so hard that you buy your own hype.
Yeah, no, really. I've said this before that people need to see difficulties as hurdles and not walls. Right.
Yes.
Like all you have to do is really just keep pushing. I know it's hard to believe, but so much of life is about just continuing to do the thing. Even if it seems like it's not going to work, you just keep doing the thing. Just keep doing the thing. Like this channel, for example, I have spent the amount of time I've spent on this channel. I've seen people start channels and exceed the number of subscribers and views and all that I have on this channel. But that doesn't matter. I'm not going to get discouraged about it. I'm just going to keep doing the thing. Right? Just like keep coming back, keep doing the thing, slowly gain subscribers, slowly gain patrons, and that adds up. Once again, if you want to become a patron and help me survive on this channel, you should go over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Anark. But like, that is really such a valuable lesson that people need to learn, is to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing at the thing that you think is the right path. Don't let difficulties dissuade you from the path. There will be difficulties no matter what path. The right path will have difficulties, right? The best of all possible paths will have difficulties. We're not living in a world that was built to be easy for us. We're living in a world, if anything, that was built to stop us from achieving our dreams, stop us from finding meaning, that it is 100% try to stop us from achieving revolutionary activity. So yeah, if it feels hard, that's because it is. Revolutionary activity is a threat to the status quo. Of course, it is going to entail friction. Of course, it's going to feel exhausting and discouraging. The system doesn't want revolution, right?
Right.
So
in fact, no system, once it becomes hegemonic, wants to be toppled. That's the point of a hegemony, right?
Yes.
Like the easiest path is filled with brambles. You have to get acquainted with the feeling of cuts and scrapes. Agreed.
100%. Yes. It can be very, very frustrating, but you have to also learn stress tolerance or distress tolerance, right? Like, I think that's a huge one that people also need to learn. The internet doesn't teach it. The internet teaches that if you feel distress, you just go all out on this person, flip out on them, like just let it all out, let the steam out. And it's like, that is not a good behavior in the real world. On the internet, there's no consequences basically, but in the real world, that is a bad behavior that is very self-sabotaging. That is very destructive. And more than self-sabotaging, it's sabotaging of everything you probably want to see succeed. It's going to be destructive to all the things around you. So yeah, like that sort of distress tolerance, that capability to be distressed, to be exhausted, but to keep moving forward is something that people really undervalue, I think. And it sucks because it's a balancing act, right? If you go too far, you'll burn yourself out. Like that's sort of the difficulty. So like over the course of the history of this channel, I've given people both sides of that advice, where it's like I want you all to know that you're gonna have to push hard. This is gonna be uncomfortable. You're gonna be distressed. You gotta keep pushing even when you're exhausted. But I also want you to understand that if you push yourself too far beyond your threshold, too far beyond 100% capacity for too long, you will burn out. You will run out of energy, right? Yes. Like it's very challenging to find that balance. I'm going to be right back. I'll use the restroom. Feel free to respond to that.
All right. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a matter of, yes, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but starting the marathon and continuing the marathon is necessary. You may stop for water along the path. You may take a breath. You may even stop moving your legs for a moment. But don't let yourself stop, because it will happen. And what started off as an ambition will turn into a dream, and from a dream into a pipe dream, from a pipe dream into a could've, from a could've into a would've, and from a would've to just another idea that floats in the wind. And we were not meant to float on the wind of whims. We were meant to create ourselves. And in that act of self-creation, that act of community construction is so core to the human endeavor that you should not let yourself give up on it. It's very difficult. I work 50 hours a week. My partner is disabled, and I take care of them as well. Actually, while we were doing this, they got top surgery, and I also had to take care of them while doing this, which was difficult. On top of that, dealing with stress in my own life. So, and I still managed to find the means to make this happen. I was one of the main organizers for a lot of broad strokes of this, right? And when I took a step back, I trusted my comrades enough where they were able to take it the rest of the way at times. Even right now, they are doing most of the work at the cooperative, while I pursue community liaison stuff, community construction, building a solidarity economy workshop, helping to create a Cooperation Shasta organization. Eventually, I'm going to be hands-on in the actual construction of a cooperative development fund and a community land trust. I've got my hands in like 5 different projects, but all of them cycle back in on the work of cooperative. And I have to manage that while managing 50 hours of work and helping my partner, who's just barely recovered from top surgery. He actually got top surgery during this process. You can do it. It is possible. If this depressed Mexican trans woman can do it, you can do it.
Depressed Mexican trans woman. Wow, that is quite a combination of words. You're doing great though, honestly. Yeah. And I mean that, that's not just a thing I'm saying. You really are doing great. And part of me wishes that you weren't out there, but you were over here in Tulsa. But we need good organizers everywhere. Can't have them all here in Cooperation Tulsa. I get it. It's fine. But you definitely should come visit sometime soon.
Yes, I've been there once, and it was great, but I only passingly saw the network. I really got it. I want to so badly, but I'd have to drive because I don't trust the airports.
I don't blame you. I don't.
Yeah. I know. Unfortunately, Nazis.
It turns out there's just lots of Nazis around these days.
Yeah, it sucks, and there keeps being more of them. We should do something about that.
Yeah, I think we should do something about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say what should be done.
Right. No, but certainly something is to be done.
I'm not going to self-incriminate or anything.
Right. But like, man, doesn't it suck? And like, wouldn't it be great if maybe there were,
fewer Nazis?
Yeah. It's some sort of ideology against having this many Nazis.
That's right. I anti-Nazism. We might,
yeah. Nazi badism.
Nazi badism.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna just stay on stream for a little while. Pretty much my only limit is if my batteries run out of juice, you know.
At some point I will run out of juice because I got off of work 4 hours ago.
Oh.
But
well, you can feel free to dip whenever you want. If that feels like a good spot for you, you know, that was a pretty good bookend to our conversation.
Yeah, I think I will just, in conclusion, organization, find just enough people to like start thinking of something strategic, start thinking strategically, figure out what industry to push into, figure out your what your targets are, figure out your funding mechanisms, CDFIs, credit unions, local activist organizations, things like cooperative development funds. If your area has one, in the United States, they're pretty scarce. That will help you make this happen. It is totally possible. As for, because I'm looking at the chat a little. As for you're talking to me. Hi there, I'm Quetza. Yeah. So, also I saw a previous comment on will mutualism work? Tactically, I mean, I mean like the combination of credit unions, worker cooperatives, and community land trusts kind of is adjacent to mutualist praxis, Lamau. But
no, I don't think Proudhon was completely off with that. I think that Proudhon was wrong to be a pacifist. Basically, he just was a reformist, essentially.
Yeah, but basically, he didn't have the guts. Right. And the Mexican Revolution is objectively the better form of real existing mutualism. Right. Look it up. Emiliano Zapata, base guy. Anyways,
and I'm out.
Anyways, with all that said, peace out. Love you guys. Solidarity economy rocks. Support the Prairieland Defendants. Free Palestine. Free Sudan. Free everything. Fuck the state. Fuck the boss. Fuck the managers. All of them, especially mine. Have a good life, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for coming on, Quetza. I'll have you on sometime soon.
Okay, peace.
See ya. All right. We're doing the thing. So, how's everybody doing? I'll turn the comments on here. There we go. Back to a more traditional live stream now. Basically just looking at the comments. Sorry, we didn't really respond to anything here, but yeah, I thought it was better just kind of a focused conversation there. Also, I should just mention that the stream is now also on Twitch TV. I made a Twitch, so now you should be able to go over to see the stream on Twitch. This is the first time I've streamed Twitch as well. I mean, so far it has one watcher, which is pretty sweet. Hope the stream looks good. I think it looks good on my feed here. Seems like it's pretty in focus. Got some good background separation. Still haven't got everything set up like I'd like in this little area, but I think this is the right direction. Imkra says, first Friday in a while, I'm free enough to listen live. That's awesome. Glad to have you here. Haven't quite gotten up to our usual numbers of somewhere around 100 or so, but you know, we'll see what happens. I am also doing the portrait style stream at the same time. I've seen other streamers doing this. I'm going to see if it works out, see if it's beneficial. I guess it's probably a good thing. There have been a couple times where I saw somebody that was doing both, and then I chose the one that was portrait because I was on my phone. So seems like it's something that does work sometimes. Also, definitely a lot easier to cut stream clips after, or shorts after the stream's over. The one and only Stir says, "Can I just say, Quetza is such a great speaker and eloquent. Such a great and eloquent speaker. Quite a word and meaning smith and conveyor. Keep it up." Yeah, Quetza is wonderful. Like Quetza started a YouTube channel a while back, but she hasn't actually been able to kind of like keep it up. But no, she's a very eloquent, very knowledgeable. Quetza is one of those people that like we have very, very similar viewpoints. What are my thoughts on Black Rose? I think Black Rose is doing a good thing. I don't know how fast they've really been expanding, but also that's not really their purpose. Their purpose is not to expand. It is a specifically anarchist organization. So its purpose is to do social insertion, to be present in the movement. And it takes kind of a while for people to move into the organization. They expect people to kind of already be doing the work to some degree, as I understand it. And admission can take a long time, but yeah, I think it's good for us to have an asbestos organization here in the United States, and I hope they get more chapters. You know, I should mention, of course, I'm an asbestos, so obviously I'm in support of Black Rose existing and doing their thing. So Rowan Bowers says, "Been trying to piece together how to make some sort of in-person public forum to get a community to report on its problems. Is that useful, and any expected hurdles?" No, absolutely that's useful. In fact, we just did one of those with Cooperation Tulsa. Cooperation Tulsa hosted one that was federated with a bunch of organizations here in town, and it went super, super well. I think we got like 70 people, something like that, which is actually really large. Sorry, I got interrupted. Somebody says, "Why do you have a phone's aspect ratio?" There's two different live streams. If you don't like the phone aspect ratio, go do the other one. There's two different versions of the live stream. But no, it was super successful. And the model we used was, I think we're just going to replicate it next time. It was great. We got lots of people out to talk about the issues that were affecting them. We split people into breakout groups where they discussed their particular issues in those breakout groups. They created signal chats afterwards, and those signal chats still exist. People are continuing to use them in order to coordinate on those issues. So I highly recommend holding general assemblies, which is what you're basically suggesting. But I would also suggest that if you're going to do so, you really do need to plan it out very extensively. This is not one of those things you're going to do at the last minute. You need to like figure out try to create a really good flyer, try to advertise it on social media, put the flyer up all around town, find people who are going to help you with it. Really try to get the word out as much as possible. Just saying it's going to exist is not enough. You have to actually let people know it's going to exist. So yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, the video I did a little while back, which I think just said like common interest in the thumbnail, that one was really about how we need to be holding general assemblies again. Melkor says, everyone I know that has tried to join Black Rose, including me, has been waiting for months to get a reply, which has led to a lot of people giving up and trying to organize the local DSA instead. Yeah, understood. I mean, I will say, as in Cooperation Tulsa, we also have a hard time getting around to our entry applications. Sometimes it absolutely does take us months to get around to entry applications. We have limited capacity, and it's not personal to anybody. It could just take a lot of time to go through the vetting process, to set up an interview, to do all that stuff. That's a lot of work. So it may really have nothing to do with them not wanting to reach out, but instead that they may be very, very booked up with all kinds of other things. I also know they are very selective. So I would say That's understandable, but I would not get discouraged. You can continue doing what you're doing there, but it's possible that they'll reach out at a later date. This is funny. Numerous people are like, thank you for the heads up about the other live stream. I think numerous people have like clicked the one that was like the phone aspect ratio, and they're like, what is this about? Why is it only the phone aspect ratio this time? Well, it's both. It's both. This is a feature that YouTube has been offering where when you do a live stream, it just allows you to basically do both a phone, a portrait, and a landscape version of the live stream at the same time. So I just figured I would do it this time, see how it turned out, see if people liked it. Panther City AO says, I love how she talked about the solidarity economy. Lots of inspiration for when we work toward opening our space. That's fantastic. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. That conversation we had right there, I think is like the core of that people need to understand about modern organizing is just the importance of prefiguration, the importance of building power, not just protests, not just affinity groups, actual power for the people, the ability to marshal the power of the people. Long Defiant says, when is the book shipping? I am not sure. That is not something that the publisher has reached out to me about. I think that the book is not going to be actually released until winter of this year. So the pre-orders, yes, the pre-orders are open, but the book will not actually be released until later. However, I'm going to give y'all a link. So, my series of video essays, which is called A Modern Anarchism, has actually now been worked up as a manuscript for PM Press, and it is going to be released later this year, but pre-orders are already open. If you want to help them see that the book actually really has like an audience and that the books are going to actually sell copies and that anarchist literature is like actually should be published and that theory should be published, then please go over and pre-order a copy of A Modern Anarchism. This won't be the last time I pitch it, so don't you worry about that, but the pre-orders are a big deal. They're probably also going to affect how much money is going to go into promoting the material and all that stuff. So the more pre-orders, the better. Help them see that, like supporting this channel and supporting me as an author is like a good bet. And that, the more copies I sell, it also helps me publish more books, right? So if y'all help me sell a bunch of copies of this book, then I get to take those numbers of the books that I sold and I get to take them and I get to bring them to the next publisher and say, hey, last time that I published a book, I had this many pre-orders. Before the book even released, people already bought this many copies. And then when the book released, they bought this many copies. So just, know that going over there to PM Press, pre-ordering the book is like a huge help in a variety of different ways. And it helps PM Press know that, this is, even though this is my first time getting published, that they made a good decision taking a chance on me. Gunblaze says, hey, was just scrolling the shorts. Happy to catch you live. I like that. I think that's why this actually kind of works, why the dual streaming version sort of works, is that, yeah, like people might just catch you on shorts as well. Like as you scroll through, it just pops you up on live stream, which I think is pretty cool. Melkor34 donated $20. I appreciate you enormously, by the way. He says, thoughts on early futurism and its connection to anarchism versus the current anti-civ anarchist trend. I got to be honest, I am not going to pretend to have like strong knowledge on that. Early futurism, when I hear early futurism, I'm thinking about like Italian futurism. So I got to be deadly honest. I don't have the kind of requisite knowledge to answer this question. However, if you just want to send me like a follow-up question or follow-up message there in the chat, clarifying, maybe I can give a little more a better answer to your question than that. But anti-civ is really weird because like sometimes anti-civ seems like it's primitivist, and sometimes anti-civ just seems like it's basically just anarchist. They're like, oh, civilization is like hierarchical society, basically. And then it's difficult to discern the anti-civ critique from just being from an anarchist critique. So, yeah. Yeah, as Griffer says, when I think of futurism, I think of nationalist movements. And I think that's just because of the influence of the Italian futurist movement and how it was like closely related with fascism in Italy. So that's my touchstone for this topic. So I'm not sure. I'm sure that's not what you're referring to, or maybe it is. Also, I just want to remind people, a good way to support the channel is to donate to the donate here on these live streams. Any amount that you can spare is enormously helpful. Also, understand that the money that comes in on the live streams is also money that supports the person who's like helping me with production. So this is also money that goes towards Violet. The Patreon goes straight to me. That's the money that I use to live. And me and her, we split the money that comes from the YouTube, specifically like through the YouTube channel. So when you contribute there, you're also helping her, and you're helping her be able to spend more time being my production assistant or my production manager or whatever for the channel. So yeah, I appreciate the live stream donations, and so does Violet. So Panther City AO says, can you talk more about Open Collective? We've been talking about opening one, and I know we need a sponsor of sorts. We'd love more details for organizers interested in it. So Open Collective is a payment gathering service. It's like basically, how the Democratic Party has like Act Blue. Well, this is like Act Blue, but for organizers. However, you do have to be able to attach a bank account to it. So if your organization doesn't like have a bank account, then you're going to need somebody who will use their bank account to hold your funds. Cooperation Tulsa currently does that for Space City Anarchist Organization. However, that is already kind of like a lot of labor. So we're not looking to be a sponsor to any other organizations at the moment. I know that at one point Open Collective themselves were acting as a sponsor to other organizations, but I think that they have ceased acting as a sponsor, and I don't blame them. Being a sponsor is actually kind of a lot of work. So yeah, not sure. I mean, it may end up being a good model for you. And one thing I do like about it is that it is like a horizontal organization. The person who started it is somebody that was in the Symbiosis Federation. So like it is a platform that is like within our ideological parameters, and it has a lot of great features. So yeah, if that works for you, highly recommend it. Sahil Khan says, one major problem in organizing is that fundamental components like a fully open network stack all the way from hardware doesn't seem to exist. Have you studied that at all? I actually don't even know what the hell this means. I got to be honest. I mean, I think I could kind of guess. It's like the fundamental components like a fully open network stack all the way from hardware doesn't seem to exist. So I'm not sure what you mean. One problem in organizing, you're just saying that there aren't programs, there isn't software and hardware that's specialized towards horizontal organizations? Because if that's the case, yeah, I would agree. That's something that's like desperately needed right now. Right now, like all those functions are kind of spread out over a bunch of platforms, and a lot of them aren't very horizontal, to be honest. But yeah, maybe you could clarify. Okay, yeah, the stuff is needed. The stuff's needed. I will say there are people in the process of making it as we speak. There's a bunch of these possible like systems that are being developed. Like insofar as you're talking about software, there's all kinds of these systems. Like Open Collective is one that we just mentioned, right? There's people doing all kinds of work, and none that come to my mind immediately, but I've seen a bunch of examples. When it comes to hardware, I'm just thinking of LoRa. I don't know how familiar you are with LoRa, LoRa, but it's like it's like local internet almost, I guess is what you would call it. And it absolutely could be turned into a sort of decentralized internet infrastructure, I believe. Tomas says, Anark, this ML called Charlatix made a 2-hour video about you, lol. Yeah, somebody showed me that. I haven't watched it. I asked them, I was like, is there anything to see here? And they're like, no, it's just all the same arguments, And it's like, if it's all the same arguments, I don't need to respond. They need to just go watch more videos by me. I've already responded to every argument that any Marxist Marxist-Leninist has ever made. There's no arguments left. I've debunked all of them. I've responded to all of them. They may not all be in one place, but they're all there. The state is counter-revolutionary, especially part 4, just demolishes authoritarian leftism. Honestly, there just shouldn't be anything left of it afterwards. On authority, garbage, belongs in a trash can. The fact that Marxists associate themselves with on authority is really, it lowers their reputation in the process because it's such a worthless text that makes so few points that I think that it actually makes them look worse by being associated with it. It really just shouldn't even be in their canon. They should be kind of ashamed of that text. It's a terrible text. And you can watch a video of me just trashing on authority. I did an entire video about that. I just did a video recently, which is probably what got him upset, about how their politics actually don't work. They pretend that they're utilitarians, but it just doesn't work. They say that by every metric, it doesn't work. So like if the metric is surviving imperialism, it doesn't. They get destroyed by imperialism all the time. Like most of their projects have been destroyed by imperialism, just like everybody else. If it's progress towards socialism, zero progress towards socialism. The only thing they can really do is claim like liberal capitalist metrics for success. So, you know, them talking about like GDP growth and industry growth and things like that, you know, quality of life. It's like, well, if quality of life is your metric for determining whether something is actually good, you should just like move to Norway or Sweden or Switzerland or just anywhere in Scandinavia. You can go to Iceland. It's like, why are you simping for China if that's all you want? And they make up all this shit about, oh, they're not exploiting the global South. It's like we're in a capitalist world system. Everywhere is exploiting the global South. If you trade in the capitalist world system, you're exploiting the global South. Furthermore, China's exploiting its own people. It's absurd. They don't have their politics are utterly empty. So I haven't watched the video. I don't care. Maybe I'll watch it at some point, but I'm very, very doubtful there's anything important there. Oh, Melkor says, early futurists were mostly individualist anarchists. Marinetti pivoted to fascism post-World War I. That doesn't shock me. There was a big overlap of individualist anarchists and fascists in pre-fascist Italy. And I've noted before, like in A Modern Anarchism Part 2, I kind of lay out, I think, some of the reasons why that might be the case. I don't really talk about fascism in Part 2, but I think that if you look at the arguments that are being made in Part 2, individualist anarchism, I think, I'm not saying it leads to fascism, but I do think that it makes people more susceptible to fascism. I do think there is an active pipeline between individualist anarchism and fascism. Once again, I want to clarify it. I'm not saying that means that individualist anarchists are fascists or anything like that. I just think it makes them susceptible to fascist arguments, because once you've accepted that really all you care about is yourself and you don't really care about others and all you're trying to do is seek your own freedom, well, then at some point you kind of realize that you can have the most freedom by becoming the hierarch. the hierarch will give you as much freedom, individual freedom, as you want. In fact, you can just command everybody else around and live in luxury and basically do whatever the hell you want all day long. And that's why I don't think that a purely individual perspective on freedom is a coherent perspective on freedom. Somebody says, or FIFA Fern says, ML seems to have a more formalized cult group status to more easily join up. It seems more plug and play. Is that a good thing? Plug and play, not the other things. Yeah. In some ways it is. I actually think that one of the things that works really well for the Marxists, and I just mean the Marxists more broadly, is that they really just have like a standard line. When you're becoming a Marxist, they just tell you a particular list of things you're supposed to say. Like you just have like these canon responses to everything. It's like there's like a dialogue tree. I don't know where this dialogue tree is that they're all learning, but they've like learned this single set of responses to everything. And the thing is, a lot of those responses are wrong. Like I've rebutted pretty much everything in the dialogue tree, but like, it is valuable that there is just this baseline, this foundation where everybody is just kind of taught the same thing. There's consistency, there's lack of confusion. I think that that works majorly in their benefit. I think it's a big reason why that their movement has spread wide, even when it has a lot of failures. And of course, I'm just pointing out this is more true of like authoritarian leftism more broadly. Marx himself has a lot of good points, but you know, I'm essentially just pointing out that this sort of dogmatism, this rigid theoretical adherence is something that makes them weak because they can't really adapt to the real world as the world changes and as their theory is confronted with reality. But they are able to indoctrinate people a lot faster, and the consistency of that dialogue tree, I think, helps people become part of their coalitions faster. So Griffer says, for popularity, it's good, but it leads to populist movements like MAGA communism hijacking it. Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, I think that Marx would despise MAGA communism, but then again, Marx would probably despise Leninism. Marx, I don't think, would really stand by any of these revisionists that have taken his theory and applied it to a sort of vulgar state politics. I don't think that he would really side with any of these people. Prod Arcsign says, hey, Anark, wishing you well. Why aren't there too many anarchist or anarcho YouTubers compared to Marxists and fascists? I don't know. I think a lot of anarchists have like a big problem being like on film. They're like shy to be on camera. They're shy to like be out in public. They want like anonymity. And I think that's a big thing holding back anarchists from actually doing more media, is that they're terrified of being out in front of cameras. They're terrified of being filmed and probably being scrutinized. Understandable, but it's a drawback for sure. I also think that the algorithms, at least since Trump came into presidency this last time, I think that the algorithms are actively suppressing anarchist material. I've noticed a difference in all of my engagement. Project Psycho says, I'm noticing that MLs don't even recommend people to start out with Marx or Engels. It's usually Parenti and Stalin. Yeah, that's because these quote unquote Marxists aren't really Marxists at this point. They like, you'll find more anarchists who are familiar with the foundations of Marx than you'll find Leninists at this point. Most Leninists have just become like vulgar anti-imperialists. They're imperialist reductionists, right? Just like we talk about people who are class reductionists or people who are race reductionists or people who are gender reductionists or whatever, where they think it's the only issue that matters and everything comes afterwards. That's how many of these quote unquote Marxists have become these days, where they don't really seem to care about class politics. They don't really seem to care about revolution. They only really care about campus geopolitics. So what they need is the vulgarizations that came way after Marx and Engels. I'm not a big fan of Engels, but Engels is 1,000 times better than all of this nonsense that came after. So yeah, they don't want people to actually read Marx. If people actually read Marx, then they wouldn't become Leninists and Stalinists and all of that. Marx does not advocate what they're doing. And Marx's texts basically directly refute that what they're doing would be progress. In Critique of the Gotha program, he lays out very structurally how the revolution should progress. I mean, he's talking about Germany in specific, but it's very much a blueprint for how revolution should progress. And they're just not following that blueprint at all. If anything, they've just discarded the blueprint and they said, okay, we're just going to do capitalism now. That's pretty much just what it boils down to. Yeah, I mean, if you read like the economic manuscripts, Critique of the Gotha program, you're not going to come away from that being a Leninist. That is not a natural extension of Marxism. I'll probably stick around for like another hour or something. Smug Radical says, Anark, is Das Kapital outdated? I'd actually say it's not. It's not. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are certain things in it that are dated, but I think the overall arguments remain pretty ironclad. Das Kapital is a great critique of capitalism. I think it remains one of the most immaculate critiques of capitalism ever written. And Marx really lays out the foundations of his critique in Das Kapital, and it still holds up very, very well. It's just it's very dense. Or I guess I should say the very beginning is very dense, and then it gets a little better afterwards. But yeah, it's a challenging text, but it absolutely is still worth reading, in my opinion. Knowledge in Defense says, you may come out of it as an Italian Leninist, but definitely not as a Stalinist. Yeah, something like that, maybe. Flinner says, are a lot of fascists in your area petite bourgeois? I'm in the MAGA area of Canada, and that's the case here. I find these type of people are more consciously evil than they are misguided. I think that's true of the ones that are like more petite bourgeois. But no, since I'm in Oklahoma, there's a lot of regular people are MAGA, to be honest. Although I got to say, fewer than ever before. I used to see like, Make America Great Again and Trump hats and all that stuff. And I rarely see that stuff anymore. That is basically never. Like that means that they had to like actively go remove that stuff. And yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. I'm sure that in more rural areas that stuff still exists, but there's been a pivot away from that among normal people, I've noticed. Rowan Bauer says, is there a good handbook or a tool set available for taking the role of a more blatant anarchist? I see significantly more materials for anonymity, which might be a selection pressure. I mean, I would just say, like, step number one is stop being afraid of people seeing your face. Just let people see your face. If you want to choose a pseudonym and then move forward. But stop being afraid of being filmed. If this is it, this is if you want to take the path I'm describing. Stop being afraid of being filmed. Stop being afraid of being recorded. Use the opportunity. See yourself as someone who is going to be there to sort of sacrifice for the movement. Because the truth is that as somebody who is like a very vocal and visible anarchist, I very much recognize that I may be targeted by the state for it. And that's something you just have to start the conversation with, or start that with your conception needs to default with an understanding that you may be targeted at some point. However, so far there's been no overt targeting. Well, I mean, the FBI did come to my door that one time, but they haven't fucked my life up in any visible way I can see. They might be doing a bunch of things behind the scenes which are screwing me over for all I know. I would assume as much. But yeah, I mean, to be an anarchist is to be against the prevailing hegemonic structure. So of course you're taking a risk, but we also take a risk in being obscure and not being able to actually engage with people in the real world. Like, which is more of a risk? Like some people, possibly being targeted by the state, or us never having a revolution and therefore never being able to affect the tides of history? Because I think that the latter is a bigger risk. And so I personally am willing to take the risk of being a target for the movement, so that the movement can progress and can spread. And I think that also there's something to be said for the fact that there's actually safety in visibility. Okay. When you're obscure and nobody knows who you are, it means that fewer people will probably come to defend you or to help you out. But like, if the state did target me or put me in prison, it's very likely that because I'm very visible, that lots of people would come to my aid. And so I think there is some protection in visibility. But if you are going to be visible, you need to avoid incriminating yourself. You need to not be advocating openly that people do illegal stuff. Or if you do, you need to learn how to phrase yourself such that you are not incriminating yourself legally, because that is just a good way to screw yourself over in the process. So that's what I would say. You need to learn laws around like how incitement works. Like you have to avoid explicit incitement. They absolutely can try you for it. So like those are the sorts of things you need to learn. You need to learn what you can and cannot say. You need to don't be afraid of cameras. Don't be afraid of being filmed. Embrace the visibility. Oh, my camera went off. I said embrace the visibility and the camera went off. It's all right. I just need to change my battery. Give me a sec. All right, I'm back. So, yeah, embrace visibility. The timing, incredible stuff. Puddle Glum says, I think it really depends on what kind of work you're doing. Some people should definitely be more outward faces while others need to stay in the shadows. I agree with that 100%. I agree with that. In fact, I think it's probably useful to have some meaningful separation there, right? Like there's above ground and there's below ground. If you're going to be below ground, yeah, probably don't also do the above ground stuff. But if you're going to do mostly above ground stuff, be visible. It benefits you to be visible doing above ground work. Knowledge and Defense says, even as a non-primitivist, I've been wondering about horizontal indigenous peoples like Zomia, Piraha, etc., being less technological, unlike all industrial ones going through class first. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certainly some aspect where a technological society is more complicated. Therefore, to develop horizontal systems and structures is more complicated. You know, it's like what me and Quetza were discussing, is that a big part of the revolutionary school is teaching the people how to administer themselves. So like, you know, when you're a horizontal society and you're not industrially advanced, that may not be the thing you want to do. You may not be like, yeah, we really want to build big factories so we can make more widgets. Like that just may not be desirable to you. But once you're out already industrialized, well, now you need to figure out how you're going to administer all of that stuff. You need to figure out how you're going to maintain people's quality of life as per all of those technological advancements you've made. So that means that prefiguration is very challenging, or rather, prefiguration in a non-technological society is pretty quick. I mean, you just basically get together and form councils and then coordinate labor. But prefiguration in a technologically advanced society means you have to take hold of the technological advancements which exist. You have to develop all of these administrative and logistical structures that teach people how to manage the society that they live in. So that's, you know, it's a challenge. Prada Arcsign says, I feel like right now we need a prefiguration of media for anarchists. People can't change what they want unless they know there's something better. I agree 1,000%. I've been promoting a few channels of people, of anarchists that I think are actually like really good examples. One is NLH. Let me see. Yep, here we go. NLH is one that I think everybody should go subscribe to. I'm going to put the link to his channel here in the comments. It's at NLH Commentary. And another one is a friend of mine who wasn't a co-organizer here in Tulsa. His name's Aaron, and his channel is called Unfreedom Perspective, which I was just sharing on the Anark Discord the other day. Let's see here. I'll link that as well. Y'all should go subscribe to these channels. These people are very much in line with our politics. You know, both of these are small, by the way, people. Like these are small channels. I'm trying to build these channels up. Unfreedom Perspective, I don't agree with every exact perspective, but me and him have had long, very productive conversations about everything he's discussing, and I think that he's bringing very useful perspectives to the movement. So y'all should definitely go over there, subscribe to both of these channels. They're still very small. When you promote my channel, promote those channels alongside them. Those are great channels to promote. Yeah, Anarchy and Self-Defense was a really good video from NLH. Agreed completely. That's a good one. I told him that I was like, I actually think that you like took my theory and my ideas and you like meaningfully expanded upon them. I think that the work that he did there was really good, and numerous people were telling him to turn it into an essay, and I agree with him 100%. He should turn it into an essay, and then he should refilm it glossy style as like a video essay, in my opinion. Yeah, Piss Missiles says Andrewism and Zoe Baker have some pretty good content, but they're larger channels. I still need to read Means and Ends. Yeah, that's the only reason I didn't bring them up. They're both great. Zoe Baker and Andrewism are phenomenal, but I assume that everybody who's watching my channel is already familiar with those people. Oh yeah, Lucky Black Cat. Thank you for reminding me. That's another one, everybody. Go follow Lucky Black Cat. She does not get nearly enough credit. I feel bad because she has put so much work into her videos. Like her stuff is so good, but it just does not get the attention it deserves. So I'm going to also put that here in the stream. Go follow Lucky Black Cat. Also, there is the Canvas. He's not like explicitly anarchist on the channel most of the time. I mean, he has 1 or 2 videos where he is, but he is an anarchist. Sean Grenier, he is an anarchist, and he's like a Malatesta style anarchist. He's very much in line with our ideas. I'm gonna do a video. I think I'm gonna do a video at some point where all I do is I just go through and I like recommend channel by channel by channel, like the channels that I really like. And I might do it kind of in opposite order where I do the smallest channels first. That way that they get the most views, like the people that are watching get to them first, and then the biggest ones will go last because people probably are already following them. But I think that would be really good. Oh yeah, What is Politics? That's another great one. There's lots of good recommendations here in the chat. So if you're watching this live stream afterwards, just look at the chat. There's tons of good recommendations here. Yeah, the Canvas, he's actually probably one of the biggest anarchist channels, but he's not explicitly anarchist. But he also runs a anarchist FAQ channel just called An Anarchist FAQ, where all he does is read an anarchist FAQ section by section. And it's really great, honestly. The Anarchist FAQ is really good, y'all. Like, I've been reading it more and more, and it's excellent. It's one of the best places to go if you just have questions about anarchism that you feel like you need answered. An Anarchist FAQ is a phenomenal place to go to learn. Lucretia McEvil, there we go. There's another one, Lucretia McEvil. Prince Shakur. That's another one. He's also great. Yeah. Somebody said the Canvas had their anarchist coming out. Actually, yeah, he did a whole video about how he's an anarchist on the main channel. Yeah, Prince Shakur for sure. Submedia, yeah, Submedia's put out some really good stuff. Oh yeah, I am CJ. Damn. Okay, see, what you know what we really need, y'all? It sounds like what we really need is to promote our people. We need to promote our people, okay? We need people to in our coalition to actually like tell people about our politics, tell people about our channels. I think that's a big deal. Let's see here, videos. Is this the right guy? CJ the Radical? Yeah, this is him. Cool. Yeah, go follow I am CJ, or he's CJ the Radical on here. He used to be really big on TikTok, and then he became an anarchist, and then a bunch of fucking authoritarian leftists just shit on him ruthlessly. I mean, they failed. Everything they said was stupid because there was just a bunch of really dead end like arguments that he could easily debunk, but it didn't matter. People like were ruthless to him, and so now he's got a YouTube. We need to go support that YouTube, y'all. All these YouTubes that are being mentioned here, we all need to go subscribe to them in mass. We all need to watch all their videos, give them views, give them subscribers, give them views, or I mean, give them watch time, comment on their videos. Like, it makes such a big difference, huge difference. Yeah, likes and shares are free. Project Psycho says, what's funny is CJ was never an ML. He was a decolonial Marxist before becoming an anarchist. See, that's people whose perspectives are like decolonial, or they're just like, anti-colonial. Those people so often become anarchists. they so often become anarchists. Because when you really look at the total structure of colonization, you realize that the critique is hierarchy. What they're doing is at every front, they're putting hierarchies of power in place, and they're destroying traditional, more horizontal modes of existence. And when you go and you're like, damn, well, what I really liked beforehand was that whole horizontal mode of existence. And then you do the research and find out, oh, well, it sounds like you're basically an anarchist then. I mean, you may not want to call yourself that for one reason or another, but the perspective which agrees with that most, the perspective that's really got that particular perspective locked down, is anarchism. And so many people who have this more kind of like decolonial perspective to begin with become anarchists, I've found. They just have to be exposed to it. Oh, there's also Thought Slime. Thought Slime hasn't been publishing as many videos lately, but she's been an open anarchist for a long time at this point. The channel has just seen a lot less uploads for a while. She's been working on Scaredy Cats a lot more, which, understandable. At a certain point, you kind of just get tired of doing the thing and you want to do another thing. Like I might make a video for a tabletop game that I've been creating at some point called Nira. So expect to see at some point I'm going to create a YouTube channel for the tabletop game I've been making since I was like 15 called Nira, which is getting closer and closer to a release or being capable of being released. So yeah, but that's a normal thing. Bricey Boy says, still would love to see live streams of your work with Cooperation Tulsa too. Yeah, we probably should figure out ways where we can live stream that a little bit better. It's just a little bit of a challenge because pretty much everybody who's out there is working, so then it's hard to get somebody who's just filming, but absolutely. Prod Arcsign says, did you know Anark that Forrest Valkai is a biologist, scientist, anarchist from Oklahoma? I didn't know the last part. I knew that he was from Oklahoma. I didn't know he was an anarchist. That means that I might want to reach out to him. All these channels are forming into one anarcho megazord. Yes, I love it. Good stuff. Good stuff. Khadija is an anarchist? I didn't know that. That's cool. Yeah, apparently Khadija is a black anarchist that isn't open about being one, but they cite Lorenzo Convoa Irvin, Ashanti Alston, Kwasi Balagoon in their videos a lot, and they've collabed with Andreism. Yeah, well, that's pretty sweet. I didn't know that. I mean, I watch her stuff. I just guess I didn't pay like super close attention. Pretty sweet. Jesse Gender. Yeah, it's another one. Yeah, we have lots of channels, y'all. We just got to support our people. We got to support our people more. Anarka Simia is actually the first one mentioned, I think, that I'm not familiar with. So I'm going to look them up. I don't know. Look them up real quick. Anarka Simia. Okay. Anarka Simia. Oh, cool. Okay. She's already got 1.3K. Okay. Well, I followed her. Sweet. I had no idea. So, oh, yeah. Nice. She did one about Martin Sostra. Oh, her first video is about anarchism. Awesome. Cool. Yeah. I'm glad you told me about that. Anarka Simia. Oh my gosh. I keep accidentally clicking tabs and then they're auto playing. Oh, Jessica says, recommend Center for Especifismo Studies. Yes, they released this great little video series about the FAU, and it is so good. Anarchosimia. Okay, yeah, I'll find her real quick. Okay. There we go. Anarchosimia. See here. Boom. 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 Channel link. Ta-da. Okay, yeah. Center for Specifismo Studies. That's another one. Oh, why is it that? Why did that happen? Center for Specifismo Studies. Wow, it gave me 100 things that were not it before it gave me it. There we go. I just spelled it wrong. That's probably why. Yeah, Center for Specifismo Studies. That's fantastic. They're off to a good start. Still very small. Go give them a follow. Yeah, nice. They've uploaded a bunch of stuff that I haven't seen. There we go. Oh, this is so funny. I told you that what the okay. The Charlatix or whatever did a response to my video. Well, he left a comment and claiming that I had never read Marx or anything. I was like, I've read Marx. Marx was my training wheels. And then, of course, what he says is, if you've read them, that means you didn't understand them, or you're consciously being disingenuous. You're falling into incredible historical revisionism, misrepresenting theory in very sloppy scientific rigor. In other words, I disagreed with him and he doesn't like it, which is understandable. I mean, he probably doesn't like being wrong, but that's just how it is, buddy. Like, I said what I meant. Like, I guess I could just say it all over again, or you could just go listen again, I suppose. But I already read all your shit, buddy. I already read it all. I'm sorry. I read it all years ago. I read it all for The State is Counter-Revolutionary. Just go watch it. It'll debunk everything you believe. Do you have two live streams going? Yeah. YouTube offers an option now where you can have like one that is portrait and one that is landscape. And I was like, yeah, I'll give that a try. We'll see how it goes. It combines the views, so seems good. Yeah. Tomas says, you need a Marxist-Leninist priest to interpret the holy texts. This reminds me of, honestly, like being Christian when I was young, like when you were Southern Baptist, they would always say that. I'd like read the Bible and I'd be like, this seems really fucked up. And they'd be like, well, you must not have understood it. It's like, no, I think I did. I mean, it says pretty explicitly what it means and what it says here. No, it's metaphor. Like, it's just like there's always this way for them to wiggle out of actually having to deal with the content of their texts. Marxists are fine if they're actually Marxists, but most people who would call themselves like Marxist-Leninists really aren't Marxists. They haven't even read Marx, most of them. Well, I'm starting to get hungry, so it's been about 3 hours, 10 seconds past 3 hours. That seems like a good stopping place. I know that if I could sustain these streams longer, that they would probably get even more views and they'd get more eyes on them. However, I do have other things I've got to do in my life. So I have something I need to get to in about an hour and a half. So I'm going to call this stream to a close. I appreciate everybody showing up, and I will see you on the next live stream, which will be on the last Friday of next month. Remember that these live streams are on the last Friday of every month. That's when they're planned. And if they are not on the last Friday of every month, then I will usually make like a community post about that. But before I end, I just want to encourage everybody that if you support the channel, please go over to my Patreon and become a patron, because right now I'm like really tight on money. My car is also starting to have problems with the transmission, which means that I might, for the first time in my life, have to take out a car loan or an auto loan, which I'm really not looking forward to, but it means that I'm going to be even tighter on money. So please go over to the Patreon, become a patron for any amount. It helps me out enormously. It's what allows me to keep doing this channel full time, but also being an organizer full time. So I appreciate everybody watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see y'all next time.